Good afternoon. Oh, sorry, I forgot to. Hold on a minute, everyone. Why can I hear myself? All right. Clerk Gonzalez-Oy, I have to gavel us in. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome all of you to the board meeting this afternoon. To access translation, please.
Buenas tardes a todos, bienvenidos para accesar la traducción.
That translation? Okay. Let's start again. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome all of you to our board meeting this afternoon. To access translation, please click on the globe icon below, or at Dejan, you can go to the corner of the room to get translation. We are heading into our closed session for tonight. Before we do, we are here to listen to any public comment there might be about our closed session items. The public gets 2 minutes for public comment per speaker. The closed session items that we will be discussing are conference with legal counsel, public employee discipline, dismissal, release. Conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. Public employee appointment, public employee discipline, dismissal, release, complaint. Conference with labor negotiations, and conference with labor negotiations. Staff, do we have any public comment?
We have no public comment.
Thank you very much. Everyone, we will reconvene for an open session at 6:30 tonight. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Okay, sorry. Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you all to the board meeting tonight. To access translation, please click on the globe icon below, or at Dejan, you can go to the corner of the room to get materials. We are returning from closed session. After our opening procedures, the public will have the opportunity to make public comment. The board has changed the public comment format. We have opportunities on non-agenda items in person, through the Zoom app, and by telephone at the beginning of the meeting. Public comment will last 1 hour. The time allotted for each speaker is 2 minutes. If you are attending the meeting in person, you will need to submit a request to address the board form to indicate your desire to speak on an agenda item. After it's been turned into staff, they are placed in order of when they were turned in. We also call on speakers one at a time and alternating between public comment at Dejan and on Zoom. If participating via Zoom, you will need to raise your hand by clicking the appropriate icon in the Zoom app, or by pressing *9 if accessing the meeting by phone. No yielding of time or substitution of speaker is permitted. The public will also have the opportunity to make public comment on agenda items after the staff presentation for each discussion and action item. The public will have 10 minutes per item and 1 minute per speaker. Due to the Brown Act, the board members cannot discuss items that are not on the agenda and do not usually respond to items presented in public comment. Now let's move to our opening procedures. First, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone, if you are willing and able, please rise. Dr. Hurst, will you lead this part of the opening procedure, please?
Absolutely. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Staff, do we have the video ready for the land acknowledgement?
Yes, we do.
Thank you. Go ahead. Yeah, let's start it one more time. so we can see if we can hear it from the beginning and a little louder. Let's see if it works.
We recognize that we are presently on the lands of the Chochenyo, Muwama, Caravan, and Lonoke peoples, and acknowledge them as the first inhabitants of the land we currently occupy.
There's a little bug in it. Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy, will you read it for us also? And then we'll make sure that we work out those little bugs. But that was Pinole Valley High School's speech and debate and their Indigenous club that did the land acknowledgement. Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy, would you do that for us, please?
Absolutely. We recognize that we are presently on the lands of the Chochenyo, Muwekma, Karka, and Ohlone peoples and acknowledge them as the first inhabitants of the land we currently occupy.
Thank you so much, Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy. We are now going to move to the labor and body recognition. I acknowledge that the burden of the environmental exploitation and systemic injustice falls upon the labor of Black and brown bodies in the building of this country and its institutions. I remember that Black and brown people were born and died working this land against their will for generations. I also acknowledge the continued contribution of the labor of survivors over the centuries to today, of all immigrant labor, including voluntary, involuntary, trafficked, forced, and undocumented peoples. Undocumented peoples building of what we refer to as the United States. That was by Dr. Rogers Ard. Dr. Hurst, could we please have roll call?
Absolutely. President Smith Folds,
Good evening, everyone. Present.
Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy,
Good evening, present.
Trustee Reckler,
Good evening, President.
Trustee Christian,
Good evening, President.
Trustee Phillips is absent. Trustee Palcar,
Good evening, President.
Okay, now say it.
Good evening, President.
and Trustee Abdul Gaparov.
Good evening, President.
All present, 1 minute, member absent.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hurst. Dr. Hurst, do we have a report out or ratification of closed session?
Absolutely. Regarding agenda item A21, a majority of the board voted to approve a resignation agreement with employee ID number 150373, a school nurse. Resignation date, January 24th, 2024, by unanimous vote with Trustee Phillips absent. Regarding agenda item A22, in closed session, the board retained and directed legal counsel to initiate or intervene in a legal action, which is social media litigation, by a 4-to-1 majority vote. The action, the defendants, and the other particulars shall, once formally commenced, be disclosed to any person upon inquiry, unless to do so would jeopardize the district's ability to effectuate service of process on one or more unserved parties, or that to do so would jeopardize the district's ability to conclude existing settlement negotiations to its advantage. The members voted as follows: Trustee Christian, yes. Trustee Reckler, yes. Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy, yes. President Smith Folds, yes. Trustee Phillips, absent. Regarding agenda item A23, the board approved the appointment of Laura Webb as interim KA principal of Montalvan K8 by a vote of 3-2, with Trustee Reckler abstaining and Trustee Phillips absent. That concludes my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Hurst. I'm going to read our public comment one more time so everybody's clear, and then we'll move to public comment. Members of the public are invited to speak to the board about any matter that is not otherwise on the agenda and is related to issues affecting public education in WCC USD. Public comment will last approximately 60 minutes. The time allotted for each speaker is 2 minutes. Individuals wishing to speak must submit a WCC USD public comment form, or participating via Zoom, individuals need to raise their hand in the Zoom app. Staff, do we have public comment?
Yes, we do. Our first public comment is Pedro Agredano.
Good evening. I wish I could speak on some of the agenda items, but I know that's not permitted. Time does not allow me to stay here until late at night as I start at 6:30 in the morning. I work for the district. I am an HVAC tech. There are a lot of issues with the district. I'm shocked that you would think that when you're discussing cuts, that we're going to be violent or anything, that you hire more security, you rope yourselves off rather than be more forthcoming. It basically makes us seem like we're the enemy. We're not. We're here for the students and we're here to support you. We wish we had your support when it came down to things with the district. Thank you.
Our next public comment is Marilyn Gwynn Scott. Please unmute yourself.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Hurst. My name is Marilyn Gwynn Scott, and I am a parent of 2 students in the district, and for the last 5 years, a scout at Mira Vista. I am here tonight in support of all of WCC USD staff. I want to speak on the hard work of all the WCC USD staff that are in the pending risks. Cutting these positions would directly affect what we're here for, our students. I say no to this pending rift tonight. Thank you.
Our next public comment is Veronica Diaz. Veronica Diaz.
I'm so sorry. I thought I had signed up to speak to E2. I can wait until then.
Sorry, I'm done.
The comment is Julianne McGarry. Next public comment is Julie Gadenbane. Please unmute yourself.
Good evening. My name is Julie Gantenbein, and I'm here tonight to provide comments and request reconsideration of the board's action on January 10th to censure Trustee Reckler. The censure resolution misrepresents the facts and evinces a misapprehension of the relevant law. The resolution's purported findings that Trustee Reckler's request to remove items from the consent calendar ultimately prevented the board from acting are wrong as a matter of law. Further, the purported findings that she had a conflict of interest under California law are not supported by any facts showing she had an economic interest in the matters cited. Trustee Reckler persuasively articulated these and other deficiencies in the board's case in her rebuttal. Indeed, the approval of the censure resolution points to the majority's ineptitude rather than wrongdoing by Trustee Reckler. The board majority's decision to invest limited resources in pursuing this matter are inconsistent with the trustee's responsibilities under the bylaws to act with dignity and professionalism, to maintain primary focus on the learning and achievement for all students, and to respect the community the board serves. In my experience, Trustee Reckler has always been a dedicated and upstanding public servant. She has listened to my concerns and provided important information when district staff has been unavailable or unresponsive, and improved my child's school experience as a result. The board's action to censure her, remove her from committees, and refer the matter to the SPPC and district attorney are unwarranted and baseless and will harm my interests and my child's interests as constituents of this district. I urge the board to reconsider and rescind the censure resolution at its next meeting. Thank you.
Our next public comment is Delon Harrison.
Good evening, board. Thank you all for coming out on this rainy day. First, I would like to start. I know we're going to be cutting a lot of money from our school district, and I know that you guys have to do this, but I really hope that you guys think about the impact that this is going to have with your lowest performing students and how I feel we can work as a community to look for solutions, especially when you're talking about, I went to all 3 budget meetings, and as a parent, I didn't understand where these cuts are going to come from. And I've seen a long list of pages of adults that are being cut from our school sites. And it's just really concerning to me because every time I come and speak to you all, I'm talking about our Black and African-American identified students and where they and how they're performing. The things that did go well and that are going well, I will be saying in my ASAT report, because there are some things that are going well, but I do feel with these budget cuts, our children and our parents will be left out, and I'm concerned about that. So I pray that you all will have some sunshine in this rain, and it's a rainy day, but that our parents and our students can be part of a success with these budget cuts, because I didn't see in none of the meetings that I attended, like where and how that's going to happen and how it's going to ensure Black students are going to be able to not fall further behind with the cuts that are happening. So I'm waiting to hear what you guys are going to do to show this, and I will be back if it's not, equitable when this budget is cut and how it's cut. Thank you. I'm complete.
Our next public comment is Charles Waitzer. Please unmute yourself.
Hi. Yeah, we're pretty upset over Leslie Reckler getting censured. My wife and I are interested in safety, number one. Number two, outstanding academic experiences for our child and other kids. And we believe that what is good for other kids is also going to be good for our child. We've been trying to figure out how this censure thing was going to help anything or anybody. And we've yet to figure that out. I don't understand why you've spent all this time doing something to harm somebody who has, over the years, gone out of her way to try and make the school system a better system. Thank you very much.
Our next public comment is Kim Chamberlain.
Good evening, Kimberly Chamberlain, IFPTE Local 21 SSA Chapter President, working through all the budgets, going to all the meetings, consistently asking for information, all of the unions standing, listening, working with the district. I understand needs, I understand requests. I still don't have a decent list. And I have yet to have a seniority list. And I've asked and asked. How am I supposed to support my members? How am I supposed to support the district? And how am I supposed to support the students of this school district if I can't get one simple request from October? I've asked, I've been nice, and I'm tired of being nice. I want to support, and I want my list. Thank you.
Our next public comment is Sue Khan. Please unmute yourself.
Good evening, school board trustees and Superintendent Hurst. My name is Susan Khan. I'm a retired educator with over 40 years total experience in the WCCUSD, teaching, coaching, athletic director, leading coaching education, and high school administration. I attended WCCUSD schools, kindergarten through high school, and graduated from John F. Kennedy High School, where my teachers prepared me for success at Cal Berkeley. I live in Richmond. I'm speaking tonight as a concerned member of the community. I'm referring to the school board meeting of January 10th, where this board proposed and voted on the censure of board member Reckler. An attorney employed by the school district conducted an investigation into allegations, and the resulting report was sent to the district attorney and another agency. In a show of disrespect, this board chose not to wait until the other agencies weighed in. Trustee Reckler was elected by her area as a parent who had an excellent record in leadership as president of the Bayside Council of PTAs. She has a strong background in business. She asks tough questions of the school district in all matters, but particularly in matters related to finance. She expects reasonable answers to the questions she asked. I expect that our school board demonstrate positive character to our students and community and to focus on policy in the best interest of all of our students. The apparent bias, as evidenced by the disrespectful and unfair actions of this board at the January 10th meeting toward Trustee Reckler, is extremely disappointing. These actions serve no purpose other than to demonstrate to our students and community a departure from mutual fairness and respect. I don't know if the damage can be undone, but I ask that you reconsider your action, rescind the censure, and apologize to Trustee Reckler.
Our next public comment is Ellen Bailey. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you. I'm a parent of a third grader in this district. Shame, shame, shame. That is the only thing that comes to mind as the board's leadership motivation to bring forward and pass a censure resolution last week. It seems solely motivated to publicly shame your colleague and my representative, Trustee Reckler. Her crime? Serving as a parent volunteer, but also pulling a consent agenda item that board leadership never re-agendized. I was completely disillusioned by the board's performance last week. I feel like I'm living in a complete disconnect. I tune in to every board meeting out of genuine fear of the future of our district, a district I am committed to keeping our children in, as I am a firm believer in the value of public education and supporting our local schools. I am genuinely terrified that the future of our district is in the hands of this board. So rarely at the board meetings do I hear a discussion of our fiscal solvency issues and plans to address it, that it feels like the board leadership has not or does not prioritize this discussion in the ways that they should. This should lead every meeting. Some on the board seem unwilling or unable to make hard votes when it matters. Your cowardice puts us steps closer and closer to the loss of local control. With a county takeover, we would also lose Dr. Hurst and his staff, whose leadership I value and respect. Aside, CBO Moses, I was especially impressed with your ability to deliver complicated budget information clearly at the forums. Your communication skills are amazing. Back to the board. The lack of urgency around this issue leaves many in our district not aware of the dire situation. There were only 88 participants in the Zoom last night when I last checked, and probably 10 of those were district staff and board. I sit in a PTA meeting where none of the parents around me have any idea of the fiscal cliff we face as a district. People are not leaning in because you are not leading. Every meeting should lead with this issue. It's because you have neglected this issue and neglected to educate the public that we're disengaged. Will you make the hard vote when it matters? Shame.
Our next public comment is Malloy House. Please unmute yourself.
My name is Susan Malloy. I'm the parent of 2 students at El Cerrito High School, and Trustee Reckler has been a responsive and diligent representative of our area. So I was very surprised and very disappointed to learn of the board's vote to censure her on January 10th. I read the resolution and I see no criminal or unethical behavior warranting censure. The district is struggling with teacher vacancies, budget shortfalls, and other very serious issues. Spending time and money on an extensive investigation and report seems like an irresponsible use of our scarce resources. In addition, by removing Trustee Reckler from subcommittees, you're limiting the board's ability to do the important work before you. I urge you to reconsider and rescind the censure resolution at your next meeting. Thank you.
Our next public comment is B. Liberman. Please unmute yourself.
My name is B. Lieberman, and I'm a retired teacher who taught in our district for almost 30 years. I was also active in UTR. I feel qualified to speak on the issue of the board's unfair censure of Leslie Reckler. Ms. Reckler is a woman of high integrity, intelligence, and skills who has served the students of this district with dedication for several decades. She is clearly held in high regard by the voters who, not once but twice, elected her to the board. Many constituents now feel uncomfortable and unsafe about how the board solves problems. I wish to express my extreme displeasure at the way the board has handled this issue. Censure is completely inappropriate and isn't a constructive attempt to remedy this matter. Decisions should be made only after a full investigation of any issue. Most boards and other organizations wait for malfeasance to be confirmed prior to passing the censure resolution. You have not waited for confirmation, and you should rescind this censure immediately. Your rush to judgment has set a very bad precedent for our community. We as a community is best served when problems are tackled with honesty, care, and compassion. This has not been done. I read the resolution and listened to Ms. Reckler's response. I don't see anything of a criminal nature in her actions that requires the attention of the FPPC. She was only doing her job as trustee, giving her unblemished record and service. Why is Ms. Reckler being censured? It is time to further examine why the board chose this path. This unfair censure, this strange and undeserved anomaly needs to be further scrutinized. It's clear that you acted hastily in your rush to judgment. You must rescind the censure now and apologize. Thank you.
Our next public comment is Deneen Steen. Please unmute yourself.
Good evening, President Smith-Folds, trustees, and Dr. Hurst. Denise Steen here, President of WCCAA, and speaking on behalf of our unit board and members. Excuse me. This is just an update. We're nearing the end of our interest-based bargaining negotiations with just a few articles to complete. Our executive directors have been meeting with Dr. Johnson weekly to stay updated on HR concerns, including vacancies, hiring timelines, and member concerns. We've been meeting monthly with interim CAO, Sonia Neely Johnson, and greatly appreciate the communication and updates that she has shared with us regarding teaching and learning departments, as well as sharing ideas and strategies that will involve our members and allow our administrative team opportunity to collaborate with her teams for greater student outcomes. We've also been meeting monthly with Dr. Hurst and appreciate his open and honest exchange of ideas, concerns, and questions that our members have raised. He has been an active listener, and we see the thought behind our conversations leading to more collaborative progress with our members. WCCAA remains positive and committed to working with all stakeholders as we educate each student that steps on our collective campuses. We are committed to the district's vision and look forward to continued collaborative conversations, meetings, and brainstorming roundtables in the name of student progress. Have a great evening. Thanks for your time.
Our next public comment is Sherrod Blankner. Please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Sherrod Blankner, and I'm a parent in the district. I was extremely disappointed to learn of the trustees' vote on January 10th meeting to censure Leslie Reckler. Sorry. I read the resolution, and I see no criminal or unethical behavior. I have worked with Leslie on both PTAs and at the Student Activity Fund, and she has always been irreproachable and by the book. And every time we ever had a question about what was the proper thing to do, we would ask Leslie because she was the most knowledgeable person about the rules. So I can't believe that she's in this position. I feel like the school board, the board has to deal with all kinds of financial issues and other issues in the district, and we're taking time to censure basically a parent volunteer who kept the SAS alive during COVID when it was about to collapse. So I just want to voice my support for Leslie and hope that you change your mind and uncensure her and cancel this lawsuit. It's totally ridiculous. Thank you.
Our next public comment is David Bilio. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, I wanted to start by thanking Kim Moses for the presentation on the budget issues she put together for the community. I thought that was very good. That was the best distillation of the district issues that I've seen. But I wanted to mainly address the board's actions at the last meeting regarding Trustee Reckler. I find it absolutely farcical that the board elected to censure and refer a trustee to the DA and FPPC for what appears to be not much of anything, while they have been unable to execute some of the basic functions of the board, which is keeping the district solvent. While the district's lawyers may have issued some sort of CYA legal opinion stating that a conflict of interest exists because Trustee Reckler served as a volunteer for a school fundraising group and pulled an item from a consent calendar, this seems like we wasted an entire board meeting at a critical time. This district has urgent issues related to finances, and multiple members of the board have repeatedly shown themselves to be unwilling or unable to address these over the last several years. Trustee Reckler has always been responsive to her constituents, and she, along with Trustee Phillips, have been the only voice of sanity regarding the district's finances for several years now. If you were to ask the average community member in the district what constitutes a conflict of interest, I'm sure almost all of them would point to something like, say, having a spouse directly employed by the district and voting on contracts and RIFs that could have a direct financial impact on you as a board member. Even if this is technically allowed, and FPPC does not consider this a conflict of interest, perceptions do matter. As one of the board members intoned last week, you have to be able to sit there with a level of integrity that is above reproach. To me, it's a clear case where anyone with a spouse directly employed by the district should recuse themselves from voting on contracts or RIFs. How is the public supposed to have confidence that you're making decisions in the best interest of the district and not for your own personal benefit? And if you feel, any of the board members feel as I'm impugning their integrity without evidence, guess what? That's what you did to Trustee Reckler at the last meeting. I'm complete.
And our last public comment is Seth. Please unmute yourself.
Hello, my name is Saida Said. I'm a teacher as well as a resident in the El Cerrito district. I would just like to make a comment on the censure of Leslie Reckler, one of a very respectful member of our community. I'm saddened and very disappointed at her censure in the last board meeting. I feel that the decision to censure a board member signifies a real breakdown in the collaborative spirit that you need to govern effectively. It also sends a message to our community that we are not willing to engage in difficult conversations in a very collaborative way. It also erodes the public's confidence in the board's ability to govern inclusively and effectively. So I feel like we should reflect on the implications of that action and the impact it has on our community. Thank you.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. We are now moving to agenda item B7, standing reports. Standing reports are brought back to the board or have been brought back to board meetings. PACs have the opportunity to come and make report out to the board is a way for we are increasing our transparency to ensure that we have knowledge about everything that's happening in the district and to make sure that the community also has that same information. We are going to start tonight with our PAC reports. PACs get 5 minutes each to come and speak to the board. They have to submit a form that they will come to speak to the board prior to the board meeting, and then they will then have that opportunity. Staff, do we have the list of PACs that are going to come? Go ahead and feel free to call the first PAC.
First PAC is MDAC.
Excuse me, community, just to be clear, it's also PACs, which are parent advisory committees, and we also have our labor partners that they are also able to come to, and committees. Thank you. So it's PAC, labor partners, and committees. Pardon me, MDAC, go ahead when you're ready.
Nomás para clarificar, voy a empezar en español, así que si alguien necesita traducción, aquí están nuestras personas. Muy buenas tardes, Superintendente Hurst y miembros de la mesa directiva. Mi nombre es Erika Cruces, soy madre de 2 niños que pertenecen a este distrito. Junto a mi compañera Stephanie, representamos como copresidentas de EMDAC en el Comité Multilingüe. Y voy a mencionar algunos puntos. Es importante que cada escuela cuente con un ILAC establecido y así tener un delegado en cada reunión del EMDAC para hacer un enlace informativo a las familias y poder monitorear los avances de sus hijos. Ahora vemos que a las escuelas cuentan con un programa que se llama Elevation, siendo una herramienta fundamental para la información de sus hijos. Y con este apoyo debería ser fácil proporcionar información a los padres de las dudas que surgen, como siempre tenemos nuestros hijos considerados como ELD, como en qué nivel está mi hijo, qué le falta a mi hijo para ser reclasificado, cómo se realizan los exámenes del ELPA, cómo le están ayudando a mi hijo para que logre el éxito y que pueda reclasificarse, o qué puedo hacer yo. Pero entonces, ¿quién me brinda esta información a nuestras familias? ¿Quién brinda ese apoyo? ¿Quién los entiende? ¿Quién los protege? Especialmente con la traducción. Nuestros padres deberían sentirse apoyados y orgullosos de que mi hijo esté llevando el apoyo de sus clases de ELD, siendo impartidos cada día en el centro escolar y sean reconocidos por sus maestros, por su escuela, por su distrito, para que sean niños de futuros bilingües o biliterarios a nivel de idioma inglés. Muchos de nuestros padres se sienten muy abandonados por la falta de apoyo y mucho se debe a la falta de traducción, tanto en documentos o de interpretación en su idioma. Aún así, quieren que lleguen todos nuestros padres a nuestro distrito. ¿Ustedes quieren que más familias estén en estas instituciones educativas y que regresen a las escuelas públicas? Ustedes tienen que dar ese apoyo. Las escuelas que están con un mejor éxito son aquellas que realizan esas reuniones en persona, ofreciendo el apoyo de traducción, y muchas veces eso es logrado gracias a las Scouts, siendo el soporte de cada escuela, ya que ellos ven las primeras necesidades de las familias. Creo que el apoyo debería ser igualitario, pero no puede ser igualitario porque no somos en los mismos números antecedentes y antes. Gracias, Leslie. Siempre has apoyado también a los ILAC y a nuestros aprendices de inglés y también a todas las reuniones.
Hello. Good afternoon, grade 2014 years superintendent and Dr. Hurst and members of the school board. My name is Erika Cruces de Zavala, and I'm a mother that have 2 students that have attended the West Contra Costa University School District. I am next to Stephanie Sakeda, my co-president from ENDAC committee, co-president of MDAC delegated. And to have we need to have a link of families of schools that have programs with elevation, and to have a toolkit to better help our students and support our parents with the information that they need for students that can have successful for parents and to be recognized. All our students are English language learners. How are we going to support them? We feel they're left out. How do you want parents to come back to our district if you don't support them? If you don't give them the tools? That's what we need for us to feel that it's meaningful for us to keep on the district. Thank you.
Family engagement in schools contributes to positive student outcomes, including improved attendance, student achievement, decreased disciplinary issues, improved parent-teacher and teacher-to-student relationships, and improved school environment. This is one of the 14 youth and family outcome bullet points addressed in the article, The Impact of Family Engagement, within our children's pre-K to 12th grade academic years. Yet it seems that our school district would rather have no family presence within our schools. Both the state and federal Department of Education provide supplemental funding to local agencies with the intent to fund the needs of our students. With these supplemental funding, there are specific funds that with requirements for parental and guardian involvement and or engagement that need to be fulfilled. Whether it is at the local school level or at the district level, such requirements must all be in compliance, which in many cases, LEAs take this as a do not go above and beyond, but just do the bare minimum of requirements. We used to see many parents or guardians attend many meetings and or serve on different required school or district committees with the intent to see and make changes happen, all to ensure that their children receive the rigorous and high quality education they are entitled to, even though we know very well that in low-income schools are predominantly Black and brown students that students attend. This is not the case. Parents or guardians want to become partners. They want to be at the decision-making table with the system and do so wholeheartedly. Most of the time, making tremendous sacrifices that go unrecognized. While everyone working for the system is getting paid to attend such meetings or complete tasks that are needed for the data purposes, no one sees the parent or guardians that make themselves present without receiving a single dime. The system asks and encourages parents to be involved in other meetings, whether it be miles away or nowadays at the tips of our fingertips with just a click away. They forget about the gas that they may need to get there, the planning ahead, the knowing that public conversation might not get in there, whether or not they have the intent or access, whatever the case may be. The system expects so much and provides not a single benefit to us parents. So many invested hours for LEAs not to provide at times the bare minimum is extremely disrespectful to those that give up so much of their time just to be that rubber stamp requirement. It's countless of hours being invested by parents or guardians just so that the LEAs can have their minimum required parents at the table to be compliant to receive their fundings. We would also like to remind you and board members and staff, prior to approving SSC budgets, all schools with principals are not being held accountable are required by law to have active ELACs if they meet the numbers. Should consult with the ELACs, SSC should be providing recommendations, and that as well with ELAC having presence at MDAC for LCAP to receive recommendations, which unfortunately our district has not been in compliance for the past many years. Thank you.
Our next pack is Teamsters.
Good evening. My name is Veronica Diaz. I work for the Teamsters. We represent your classified staff. I want to acknowledge all of the staff in the CBO's office and the CBO that has sat in countless meetings with us, answering all of our mundane questions and going line item by line item with us. Thank you. That being said, I don't agree with the outcomes. I guess it's more on principle at this point than any math that you can show me. I don't agree with a single person or position, vacant or not, being cut. While I commend you for your willingness to listen, all of you, and for being so transparent about the methodology that you've used to get here tonight, transparency is only going to get us so far. It is time for you to become advocates, not just us. Advocates with the county, advocates with the state, advocates in Sacramento. I've invited you to become advocates with us on multiple occasions, and I hope that you will take us up on that this year. The truth around funding for education in California is often depressing, sometimes laughable, but always painful. The truth is that you do not receive enough money to ensure support for your staff or success for your students. You can lay off a few dozen people each year for the next decade, but it will never be enough to balance your budget due to ADA projections and enrollment projections. And we will continue to operate in crisis mode. Your community will continue to operate in crisis mode. The truth is that you will continue to cut bit by bit until there is a raggedy, bare bones team of overworked staff per campus. I sincerely believe that every single position slated for reduction tonight, regardless of bargaining unit or not, is needed in the district. We continue to have hundreds of vacancies. And while I know you budget for positions, not people, it is profoundly unfair to further reduce the amount of adults on campus given the vacancy crisis. We can't even attract subs in our unit. A little under 80% of your classified staff are either parents or graduates of West Contra Costa or have kids who graduated from this district and they stay here because they love this district. When you cut them, you cut into this community and demonstrate to your students that a career in education is not a good idea, that it is perilous, actually. I know that we're going to get a chance to speak on this agenda item in a bit, but I ask you to vote with your conscience tonight. I ask you to put your families and your community first, but longer term, and the main point that I hope you take away today is that I ask you to advocate. If you don't think that you should be put in this position every single year, cutting school community outreach workers, reducing custodial support, cutting campus safety, be truthful with the county, be truthful with the state about what you think that you need to make this place run. Because I don't think you need less people to make this place run. I think you need more than what you currently have budgeted for. And please advocate for an end to ADA funding. California is just among a small minority of states, 5, I think, nationwide that do it this way, and it doesn't make any sense. The longer that you keep looking to cut staff to balance your budget, the more instability you will condone. Thank you.
Our next PAC is CBOC. Our next PAC is DLI PAC.
Good evening, Superintendent Dr. Hurst and board members. We are here representing the dual immersion programs in Spanish and Mandarin in various schools in our district, in which our programs currently stand. We wanted to take the time to introduce ourselves to you guys this evening to share with you that we will continue to receive anxious and worried parents about the current and future standing of our programs as you consider the next budget cuts in our programming. Parents need transparency, they need honesty, they need time-bound plans, and they need platforms where they can voice their questions and input so that realistic plans can be shared with them so that they can plan for their children's futures. Please remember that every decision impacts a family's decision to stay in our district, thrive in their programs, and most importantly, survive in our district. We remain hopeful that our feedback will continue to be gathered through our various meetings and shared with all of you, and that not only will you hear us out, but you will also incorporate our feedback in some shape or form. Thank you.
Good evening. I just wanted to add, I really appreciate each and every one of you. And I also want all of you to consider, as one of the other delegates had also mentioned, us parents who are here, we are invested in this district, in our teachers and in our schools. I'm also a former educator, and it is challenging to see how we are constantly holding on by a thread. Please don't cut any of our programs. Think of all of our children. I will bring our kids over here. My daughter's ready to speak to remind you who you guys are working for. We've come together to visualize tomorrow, the future of our children, to plan for them. Let's continue to do that. Let's advocate together. I am here to help you as you are here to help us. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you, everyone. That's the conclusion of our PACs. Ms. Harrison, can you come here for a second? Because I want to make sure that everything was followed, because Ms. Harrison thought that she was speaking tonight too. Everyone give me just 1 second. Come this way, Ms. Harrison.
I'm sorry, President Smith's point of order. Should we go in recess?
No, no.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I apologize for not doing it appropriately. I would just like to do a report out on ASAT. I would like to talk about, we are meeting with other community organizations. We have met with some board members. Demetria, we have to reschedule with you regarding our Afrocentric Black school for our children and what that looks like. We are excited about that, and the community is very backing us. And thank you, Mr. and Othaby, and we have Leslie coming up and Jamila too. And Dr. Hurst already did. So thank you all for y'all strong input in supporting our community and our parents. We also would like to invite people to come to our ASAT meeting on the 30th. We'll be talking about iReady, and we definitely want parents to know what that is and how they can support their children. So the district will be sharing that information. So please come out to that meeting. You can look at the OASA newsletter and get more details about that. We also would like to appreciate the OASA Scout, Juanita Towns. We have now, this is the most, I've been in this district since 2015. We now have 45 APACs confirmed, and these are not teachers, principals, and scouts. These are actual parents. So I want to thank Sonia Neely Johnson for making sure that the principals are doing their part, and Juanita for making sure that when the scouts and principals need support to get their stuff in the tracker that they started is happening. So that's great teamwork on making sure that's happening. And we also just would like to work more closely with the district and ensuring that parents are involved when you guys are creating solutions, and OASA, that we have a better way of working together, a clear structure that we keep in place so that Black and African-American parents can continue to work in partnership with the district for our better students' outcome. And we will be getting an update on the status of our students with reading and math at this meeting, at the OASA meeting also. So thank you, and I'm complete. Please come out.
Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate your flexibility with that. Again, this is a process that we're bringing back, so it's going to take a little bit of getting used to, but we are excited to have the PACs, the committees, and labor come and speak to the board. The next opportunity will be February the 7th. So please look out for that email and fill out that form. Thank you so very much. We are now moving on to agenda review and adoption. Board, if there are no objections, I would like to adopt the agenda. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the agenda has been adopted. We are now moving on to item C, consent items. Board, is there any consent items that need to be removed or you would like to be removed? Trustee Reckler, go ahead.
I want to pull C7 fundraising for discussion.
That's been pulled. Trustee Reckler, that one has already been pulled off the agenda.
Point of order.
What's your point?
I printed the agenda at 3:13 and I just looked at the agenda a short time ago. It is not a deleted item. It is still live.
Give me 1 second, Trustee Reckler. Trustee Reckler, I've just been advised that there is a revised agenda that has been posted. Can we say the location of that agenda? Is it on our website?
It is on Assembly. So there is a revised agenda on Assembly that has that item removed.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at the agenda right now. C7 is a live item. I'm very happy to say why I'm pulling it. If you want to pull it off the agenda, that's fine. I'm pulling it for discussion because there's still an item that starts today, yet is on today's agenda for approval. If the superintendent would like to pull it, that's fine, but that's my reason for wanting to pull it for discussion.
Thank you so much. This has been pulled off the agenda? Okay.
Yes, and just for clarity, we would like to pull that item.
Okay. Off the agenda.
Yes, ma'am, off the agenda.
Thank you. Oops, sorry, any other items?
Yes, I'd like to pull C5, approval of membership of district facilities 7-Eleven committee for discussion.
Thank you. Anyone else? Board, is there a motion to approve the consent items with item 5 approved, removed for discussion?
I move that we approve the consent calendar with C5 remove for discussion.
Thank you. I will second that.
Sorry, I'd like to put another agenda, another motion on the floor, please.
Go ahead.
The motion is that C5 is pulled for discussion, but C7 is removed off the agenda.
Dr. Hurst, C7 is removed off the agenda, correct?
C7 is removed off the agenda, ma'am.
Point of order, it is not.
What's your point?
It is not removed off the agenda. You can go to the agenda right now and it is on the agenda.
Thank you. Trustee or Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy.
Thank you, President Smith-Folds. I think just for timeliness and so that we don't argue, could we just go along with Trustee Reckler's motion? Because it doesn't cost us anything except for our sanity. So I just suggest we accept her motion as an amendment and that we move forward.
The motion on the floor is to remove C5 and C7.
No, remove C5
C5
for discussion, C7 from the agenda completely.
The motion is to remove C5 for discussion and to remove C7 off the agenda. Is there a second?
Reckler will second.
Thank you. Board to the vote. Student trustees, here we go. First one to the vote, okay? So, student trustee Hal Carr.
I abstain.
Thank you very much. Student trustee Abdu-Gar Parvo.
Abstain.
Thank you. Trustee Phillips.
Yes.
Trustee Christian.
Yes.
Thank you. Trustee Reckler.
Reckler, yes.
Clerk Gonzalez Hoy,
Yes.
and Smith Folds is a yes. Thank you. Very, very good, student trustees. That was it. We are now moving on to the superintendent's communication. Dr. Hurst, this is your item.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Can we pull up the presentation? And while we're doing that, just to inform the board and the public, we were scheduled to have a special education and curriculum review. But in talking with the board president, I asked if we could move that special ed curriculum review to the next board meeting. She shared yes. So we have an abbreviated report that we're going to share with you. If you can go to the next slide. We have two memoriams that we want to share with you. The district would like to take the time to recognize the contributions of members of our school community who have passed away. Peyton was a senior at El Cerrito High School. She touched the lives of so many students and staff throughout the WCCUSD community. She was an exceptional student with dreams of attending school at California State University, Fullerton. Although Fullerton is a well-respected academic institution, Peyton loved the fact that it was so close to Disneyland, which was truly her favorite place on earth. At El Cerrito High School, Peyton excelled as a member of the softball team and the golf team. Peyton is the first female golfer at El Cerrito High School to make it to the North County section playoffs. This is no small feat and speaks of her level of commitment, dedication, and hard work. Peyton is a trailblazer, and the El Cerrito High School community is mourning the loss of one of our rays of sunshine. Though Peyton is no longer with us in the physical realm, we have all been touched by her and will continue to allow her light to shine through all of us. We love you, Peyton. Can you please join me in a moment of silence? Thank you. Can we go to the next memoriam? We also regret to inform you that Maria Weersig, food service cook manager at Soskins Middle School, recently passed away. She's worked in the food services department since 2010. She also worked at El Cerrito and Panola Valley High School. And our thoughts and prayers go to the family and friends during this difficult time. Please join me also in a moment of silence. Thank you. And our next slide. And we are very excited to have our two new student trustees here. And we wanted to just share a little bit about them. We have student Lola Abdugaparov. She attends Middle College High School. And we asked them these same questions about their future plans. She desires to be in the teaching profession, or she would also like to be possibly a professor. So yes, we need more teachers. Awesome. Her hobbies includes cross country, track, poetry, and feminist podcasts. Her favorite food, sushi, and pizza. And then we asked Ms. Abdugaparov her why. Why does she want to be a student trustee? And she said that she found the education system fascinating and that she's hoping to gain some new insights in being a student trustee. And as a student, she says that she really values the quality of our schools and she really has a desire to make our schools better. So let's give it up for our new student trustee, Trustee Abdugaparov. Welcome aboard. We'd also like to welcome student trustee Camille Halkar. She attends De Anza High School, and she has future plans of being in government or pre-law. Outstanding. And her hobbies includes walking, playing guitar. She loves spending time with her friends. She loves spending time with her cat. She loves reading and writing. And coincidentally, she also loves sushi. And when we asked her why about becoming a student trustee, she said, joining the board as a student trustee provides me with an opportunity to represent my peers, gain valuable leadership experience, and contribute to positive change within the district. We're excited to have them both on board. They're already planning their first presentation to the board, and we're really wanting to elevate student voice. And they're planning, Madam President, to come back to the board with our first presentation on February the 14th. So welcome aboard, student trustees. And again, that was an abbreviated report. At this time, we'll turn it back over to our board president, and we'll bring back the SPED curriculum review at our next board meeting, ma'am.
Thank you so very much. Board, during superintendent reports, we only ask questions. Board, do you have any questions? Seeing no questions, I do want to offer the board the opportunity to only welcome the student trustees. Staff, could we put 1 minute on the clock for any board member who wants to welcome the student trustees or have anything to say specifically to the student trustees? Anyone want to take that opportunity? Trustee Phillips, go ahead.
Hi, ladies. Just want to take this opportunity to welcome both of you to the board. This is a really good chance for you to learn about your local school district and local government, to be honest. So I encourage both of you to take full advantage of the opportunity. And if I could be of assistance in any way, please let me know. Oh, no problem.
Thank you, Trustee Phillips. Anyone else want to take a minute to welcome the student trustees? Let's go Trustee Christian, and then we'll just work our way back around. Trustee Christian, go ahead, please.
Yes, I'd like to say welcome to the board, and it's a lot to learn and engage and ask many questions and go from there. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Christian. Trustee Reckler.
Welcome. I just wanted to say hello. If there's anything I can do to support you, please let me know. And you're in for a fabulous experience. I guarantee you're going to leave here and have lots of stories to tell. And yeah, have fun with it.
Thank you, Trustee Reckler. Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy.
Thank you, President Smith-Foltz. I also want to echo welcome to the board. Don't forget, you are representing 26,000 students up here. So your voice is critical in the decisions that we make. The reason you vote first is because we take your vote in consideration because you're voting on behalf of the students of West Contra Costa, right? So your voice is critical to me. Every time you both speak, I think our students are speaking, all of our students are speaking, right? So your opinion is really important. So remember that as you know, we have these meetings because we really appreciate that engagement. So thank you so much for being here. And if you have any questions, any of us are available.
Thank you so much, Clerk. Thank you so much, Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy. Thank you. Dr. Hurst, you've already said a welcome, but anything to add?
No, I'm just excited about the topic that they're going to be bringing to the board. They've already shared some ideas about engaging with all the students across the district, but especially our secondary schools. So I'm looking forward to that presentation on the 14th, and welcome aboard, both of you.
Thank you so much. I want to say welcome to both of you. This is something that you have to take a breath in because it can become overwhelming, but you can only eat an elephant one bite at a time. So just take a bite, take another bite, take another bite. And we are absolutely thrilled to have you here. All of our student trustees have been excellent, and we know that you will be excellent also. If you need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. Trustee Abdou-Gar-Parvo, I will get better and faster. I have to break it down a little bit now, but I will get better and faster. Trustee Palkar. Thank you so much. Never hesitate to correct me with your name. That's your name, your heritage, your culture, your family, your ties. correct me. I will not feel bad about it at all. I'm here for you and to make sure that your names are pronounced correctly. So please let me know. And stop us with anything. If you have a question, just say point of order and we'll stop and then we'll address it, okay? We're here to teach you and to learn from you. So it is a symbiotic relationship. So welcome and we appreciate you. Go ahead, ma'am. You have something to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you all for such a warm welcome. I'm really excited to be able to work with you. Thank you so much. And I'm really grateful for this opportunity.
No worries. That's what we're here for. You good? Okay, we're going to move on. Thank you so much, everyone. Dr. Hurst, thank you so much for your superintendent's report. Director Fleischman, we look forward to your report coming back to us. Thank you so very much. We are now moving to our action items. Action item E1. Mr. Freeze, I believe this is your item, sir.
Yes, thank you, President Smith Folds, Board, and Superintendent Hurst. Tonight, we're asking the board, staff recommends amending the architectural contracts for Kennedy High School and Richmond High School modernization projects. The approval of these amendments will authorize the architects to proceed with schematic design services while we complete the architectural agreement negotiation and finalize and bring it back to the board. The board authorized Kennedy High School mod and Richmond High School mod options, including the project scope and budget, on November 8th of 2023. The district recommends, again, amending the architectural agreement to authorize $800,000 in schematic design services for each high school while we complete the final agreement. The recommendation is to amend the architectural contract for the initial schematic design services for Kennedy High School and Richmond High School modernization for $800,000. The total funding would be $1.6 million from Measure R coming from the bond fund.
Thank you, sir. Board, do we have any questions? Oh, public comment first. Do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
Okay, now do we have any, hold on. We do have public comment? Okay, go ahead.
Our first public comment is Maisha HG. Please unmute yourself.
Good evening, Maisha Harris Gash. I guess I didn't change that when I signed in today. I'm just speaking to say, of course I want you to approve this for my alma mater, for my students, for our community, so that we can get this thing going. That's all.
Our next public comment is Mike Peretz. Please unmute yourself.
Good evening, everybody. And Maisha, I hope I'm not disappointing you, and I don't. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
But I don't mean to throw a monkey wrench into the plan. I also look forward to the second building of Kennedy High School. I did get to see the first one. I'm very concerned about you accepting any school that does not have the auxiliary gym that I've talked to you about before. I will share with the public an excerpt from an email that I sent to the board earlier tonight. Kennedy has great unfulfilled potential, and this rebuild is an opportunity that we must not squander. If we want JFK to be a cost-effective, viable, comprehensive high school, we must focus on the strengths already there. Then we can build upon those strengths to improve our weaknesses. I've got a lot more to say, but bottom line is, please take a look at what inequities there are in building a school with no auxiliary gym.
That concludes welcome.
Thank you so much, staff. Board, we're going to go to questions. We're going to do 3 questions and a 1.5 comments. If we need more questions, always you can just let me know, but we're going to start with 3 questions and a 1.5 comments. Board, do we have any questions? Trustee Reckler, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Freeze, would you be able to explain the connection of the increase in architectural fees and an auxiliary gym?
I'm sorry, Trustee Reckler, could you restate that in regards to the auxiliary gym?
Sure. Can you connect the board action tonight about the increase in architectural fees and an auxiliary gym?
Sure. So when the board approved the recommendations back on November 8th, we had brought forward the budget in the scope of the project, which included a field house. The auxiliary gym was not included, although as we go through this project, our hope is to see if we can find project savings enough to actually move forward with a gym building. But as it stands right now, the budget does not allow it in the current scheme, the way the board had approved the options.
However, it's my understanding that's not off the table, though.
That is correct. It is not off the table.
And you would need an architectural increase in budget to even begin to scope out that project. Is that correct? Or
That is correct. This is the next phase in the architectural agreement. So the scoping and sequence was the first part of the agreement that was approved by the board. While the board had approved the entire architectural agreement back in May of 2023, the only portion that was originally executed was the scoping and budgeting sequence portion of that contract. Tonight, we're here asking for approval to approve the schematic design phase, where we actually get into placing the buildings on campus, look at the physical size of the buildings, overall budget and scope. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Board, any more questions? Trustee Phillips, go ahead.
Is it feasible to include as I'm thinking through the question, I think it would cause more confusion if we did it that way. So I'm going to withdraw my question and I want to clarify what you said, Mr. Freeze. And that is if that one, the budget is not there for an auxiliary gym right now. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And two, if there are cost savings in the future where we are able to do that, it would come back to the board.
That is correct.
So my third and final question then is, how would not having the auxiliary gym affect female sports?
So that's a question I can't answer for you as far as the Title V. Currently, the gym that is there is shared both equally between the boys and the girls. They both have equal facilitation and access to that current facility.
Thank you.
Thank you, board. Any other questions? Trustee Christian?
Yeah, the question, what everybody has been saying about the auxiliary gym. So we have to wait and see until we can determine if we have enough money to add the auxiliary gym?
That is correct. We're very early in the stages of design. It is a multi-phase project. The bulk of the dollars going to the new buildings, which is the educational facility, replacing the 100 and 200 building, as well as the cafeteria, trying to pronounce that one, the cafeteria combination theater buildings. And then the rest of the money would go towards the mod and the field house. And if there were dollars available, then there a possibility that the gymnasium could be built. But we won't know that until further into the process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Trustee Christian. Board, any other questions? Can I get a motion? Go ahead, Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy.
I move that we amend the architectural contracts.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Christian. Board, any comments? Remember, we're going to do a 1.5 minute comments. Any comments? Trustee Reckler? Trustee Reckler, hold on one second. Let him put a 1.5 minutes up. Okay, go ahead, Trustee Reckler.
Thank you. I think it's really important that the hope of an auxiliary gym is kept alive. It is actually really important for sports, and all other campuses, I believe, have them. And this can't be forgotten. So I'm just saying this to keep that conversation alive. Thank you. Oh, and also, I'm sorry, is that if we don't approve the contract tonight, nothing will be built. So this is a key marker that needs to be passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Reckler. Any other comments? Okay, we'll go straight to the vote. Student Trustee Abdugar Parvo. Your vote, please, ma'am.
Yay.
Thank you. We are now Trustee Phillips.
Yes.
Thank you. Trustee Christian.
Yes.
Thank you. Trustee Reckler.
Reckler, yes.
Thank you. Clerk Gonzalez Hoy.
Yes.
Thank you, and I'm a yes. Thank you, Mr. Freeze. We are now moving on to action item E2. Just as a reminder, the public will have the opportunity to make public comment on each one of these action items after the staff presentation. The time allotted for public comment on the action item will be no more than 10 minutes and 1 minute per speaker. CBO Moses, I believe that this is your item.
Yes, thank you, President Smith-Folds. Tonight, we have a presentation. We're asking that our school board approve our reductions as recommended towards our fiscal solvency plan. Tonight, we're asking that we approve 5.6 million in non-salary reductions and 14.1 million in salary reductions as defined in the fiscal solvency plan. The presentation tonight will emphasize some of the components of the plan, how it was created, and the reductions that we're recommending for our board. I want to first thank the partnership of labor, staff, community, especially the cabinet and the business services team for providing not just expertise, but also support through this process, this difficult process of identifying reductions. So I'd like to start with an overview of what we'll be looking at tonight. What we'll be looking at is the reason why a fiscal solvency plan is needed. We're going to look at how this plan was developed, the process for the decision related to these recommended reductions, and then we're finally going to present those reductions to the board for consideration. I will then discuss how we can move forward together as a community, and we'll conclude our presentation with words from our fiscal expert, Javetta Cleveland. Next slide. So why does our district need a fiscal solvency plan? Next slide. We've been discussing the issues of our budget for a very long time now, but especially since the start of this school year in order to get to this place of identifying these reductions and recommending action from the board. This slide actually relates to an article that was written regarding the issues that we're having, not only within our district, but across the state with school funding. There's a link on this page to an article about California's public schools and the fiscal cliff. What this article highlights, I might add with additions from our district and districts similar to ours, is that we're currently facing difficult budget decisions as a result of funding for our public schools. California is experiencing an enrollment and attendance decline. At the same time, we're also facing the end of our one-time revenues. The pandemic-related revenues are expiring very soon, and we'll have to face difficult decisions about how to afford the programs that were funded with these one-time monies. At the same time, the cost of providing education is on the rise. In addition, what complicates this picture is that our vacancies within our district and districts like ours across the state, there continues to be a concern with attracting staff. So we do realize that we need salary increases in order to be competitive in the marketplace, yet we have this issue with the budget that we're going to discuss further this evening. These are all complicated issues that we must address in order to ensure that the programs within our district meet our needs, the needs of our students, the needs of our community, and the needs of our schools. Next slide. So why a reduction plan right now? Well, our problem is not new. Back in the 1920 school year, our district began a fiscal solvency plan to identify $24 million in budget reductions. This was needed in order to address structural deficits within our budget. Our district was facing fiscal insolvency then, and unfortunately today we stand here in the same place. However, in 2019, the COVID pandemic struck. And at that time, it was necessary for our district to shift our priorities towards recovering from the pandemic. And at the same time, we received $139 million in one-time monies from the state and federal government in order to address and mitigate the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. At that time, it was explained that those monies would be available for use from March 2020 through September 2024. These one-time resources allowed us to operate without budgetary reductions during the recovery from the pandemic. However, as we see the end of those revenues, it is now time to address the structural deficit with a fiscal solvency plan in order to ensure that our budget can continue to meet the needs of our schools and students. So we are identifying tonight potential reductions to address this deficit and in our unrestricted operating budget. Next slide. In addition to making these recommendations for our budget, we are also facing county oversight for our budgetary decisions. And our County Office of Education is increasingly concerned about our structural deficit. We were issued a letter on September 26th, where the county identified that a fiscal solvency plan to address the necessary reductions needed to happen in order for our district to be viewed as having the ability to remain fiscally solvent. This letter also outlined that by January 24th, which is today, our board needed to take action to implement this plan in order to address the structural deficit. So that is why this presentation is happening tonight, and we're asking for the consideration of the board, because if reductions are not made, then the Contra Costa County Office of Education has indicated that they will exercise the right to assume internal control of our district in order to address our fiscal needs, or specifically to address the potential of fiscal insolvency within our district. Next slide. So I mentioned that what we're looking at this evening is the unrestricted operating budget. However, we often speak of our school funds in terms of the combined budget. I'd like to share with you a little bit of information about the difference between our unrestricted operations budget and our restricted supplemental budgets. Those two budgets together are called our combined budgets, but they operate very differently. So I'll start with the information on the left related to our unrestricted operations budget. This is the budget that we are concerned with this evening. This budget must pay for our daily operations and services. It must also pay for the required staff for our basic programming, and it must pay for the materials and supplies needed to implement instruction and ensure the learning of our students each day. On the right side of the T-chart, you'll see that we also have additional revenues that come into our district in order to provide enhanced services for specific needs and specific populations. We refer to this as our supplemental budgets. These budgets provide additional funding for programming related to short-term program goals, and these funds are monitored for the expected use, and they are not flexible in that we cannot use them for the operating side of the house. Because we must ensure that we can meet the obligations of our budgeted expenditures with our operations budget, we are asking that you consider reductions this evening in order to improve our position to do that. Next slide. This slide it comes from our first interim report that was delivered to the board. This indicates what our multi-year projections are for our district. However, this slide has been prepared to show you what will happen if we do nothing. If we do nothing in order to address our structural deficit, what I'd like you to see is that by the year 25-26, our district will be $54.8 million operating in the red. I'd like to further explain that if we look at the current school year, we are operating without deficit spending. In fact, we are expected to have a balance at the end of this school year. However, I'd like you to pay attention to the line third from the bottom that identifies our required reserve. This line, the first one is green, the next two are red, indicates the amount of money that we must keep on hand in order to satisfy the 3% reserve requirement for the state. This is money that the state requires us to be able to retain in this operating budget in order to ensure that we have funds set aside for economic uncertainty at the state level. If we are unable to meet this 3% reserve, then we are deemed fiscally insolvent, and the County Office of Education and the state monitors us at a higher level and provides internal controls in order to ensure that our budgetary decisions are meeting the needs of the budget. It's extremely important that tonight we consider these reductions so that we can continue as a district to have the ability to make the decisions about what is needed in our community. I also want to point out that if we do nothing as soon as next year, 24-25 school year, we would be deficits, the end of the school year, we would have a deficit of 12.4 million, and that is not enough to meet the 3% reserve of 15.3 million. And so we must act now in order to ensure that this is not where we land in the next school year. Next slide. This slide includes the same information, but it also includes our plan of what we need to do in order to address this situation. So this is our multi-year projected budget. And what it shows is the exact same information starting that you saw on the other page. But if you'll notice, on line 3, we show actions for fiscal solvency reductions in the 24-25 school year and in the 25-26 school year. What I'd like to point out is that tonight we are asking for $19.7 million in reductions. And this is because this is the way our plan was initially written and adopted at the June 2023, at the board meeting in June of 2023. The reason why this net 17.3 million is because the fiscal solvency plan was written with consideration for the step and column increases. We're asking to reduce $19.7 million tonight, and that will yield us a reduction of 17.3 million in next year's budget. However, I'd like to also show you that if you go down 3 additional lines, we're also needing to use our special reserve transfers in order to ensure that we can meet that 3% reserve. We are implementing these reductions or recommending the implementation of these reductions, but at the same time, it is projected that we will need $10.8 million of our reserves in order to have enough balance to meet that 3% requirement. If you'll notice, the ending fund balance with these reductions is expected to be $15.69 million, and our requirement for the reserve in that same year is expected to be $15.39 million, which leaves just our revolving cash in our stores as what is left over in that year 2 budget. I'd like you to look at year 3 as well. For the 25-26 school year. Unfortunately, due to issues of economic downturn, our COLA has been reduced, which has caused us to make reductions to this multi-year budget, in addition to what we anticipated we would already need. So we want to point out that in year 3, which is the 25-26 school year, we would need to retain the reductions that, if they are approved, will be identified in next year's budget. And in addition to retaining those reductions, we would also need to identify an additional $7 million in reductions. Even doing this, you might notice that a few lines down, we are still needing to tap into our reserve account. it is anticipated that we would need $17.8 million of reserves to be contributed to this budget in order for us to meet the 3% reserve for the ending fund balance in 25-26. These figures are alarming. Unfortunately, this is our reality due to a reduction in COLA and due to the reduction of revenue and the increase of cost of doing business. Next slide. So how was the plan that will be presented tonight developed? Next slide. So in the spring of 2023, the business services team began the process of creating a multi-year budget to present to the board, and also with that budget, a reduction plan. It was decided at that time what the cut amounts would be in order to ensure that we could meet our obligations with our multi-year budget. What you notice in the slide that I just previously presented to you, our economic conditions have changed, and our fiscal solvency plan now also includes the use of reserves. The June plan did not include use of reserves. However, what we've been doing since this fiscal solvency plan and multi-year budget was approved in June is the business services team has been analyzing the 23-24 revenues and expenses. We needed to verify that the amount that we're expending and the amount that we're expected to reduce are the accurate amounts that we should target. And we did find some changes, and this is why we're also recommending that we use the use of some of those reserves. This is primarily due to the fact that we were projected to have a COLA upwards of 3.9%, and that COLA is now projected to be less than 1%. That has made a big impact on our budget revenue and our budget projections. However, in verifying those amounts and creating this new multi-year budget, we also, at the same time, were implementing actions to identify reductions with community. We had a budget subcommittee that was chaired by Trustee Smith-Folds and at the time, President Gonzalez-Hoy, with the leadership of our trustees and the input of our labor unions and our cabinet officials. We put heads together, we reviewed all contracts and expenditures, and went through a democratic process of identifying what contracts we could afford to reduce and which contracts we could not afford to impact at this time. Through the work of that budget subcommittee, we identified approximately $5 million in cuts. Good job. And that meant that the number of FTE we were targeting was reduced accordingly. So also in the fall, in December, we presented the initial reduction list submitted to the board. We've done work since that time to listen to labor, gather input from the community, and make recommended changes to the plan. The cabinet has been hard at work looking at programs, analyzing the effect of schools and departments, and really trying to make sure we get it right in terms of the areas in which we could recommend for reduction tonight. Next slide. So how did we make decisions? Next slide. Well, I've already spoken to you about the board budget subcommittee, and that subcommittee identified reductions in contracts and services. We also used the executive cabinet to analyze the information. The cabinet's job was to identify potential reductions in staffing and programming to bring forward for consideration. Through this process, we had an analysis of the staffing matrix in order to ensure that the recommendations were equitable across our school sites and across our departments. And the input from community and labor allowed cabinet to go back to the table, dig deeper with thinking through their recommendations and suggestions. And so adjustments were made through December and January, and tonight's list looks very different from the initial list in December. Next slide. So what are these recommended reductions? Next slide. This table shows the recommended reductions that are related to salary. I'd like to point out that in June, the initial fiscal solvency plan that was created called for 145 FTE to be reduced across our district.
We had several iterations of this plan. It was reduced to 134. It was reduced again to 125. And today we bring to you a reduction list that includes the recommendation of 122 FTEs to be reduced. I want to commend the committee. I want to commend labor. I want to commend the cabinet. Several positions were identified as critical, and we were able to find ways to remove those positions from the list and make different recommendations in order not to impact programs, the programs that we were analyzing. Specifically, those positions that are most notable that were removed from the list were school community outreach workers at the elementary level and the music teachers also at the elementary level. It was decided that we would find a way to ensure that those programs are funded in order to keep those activities and actions at our school sites. So the list that you have this evening, and I believe that Cabinet, our Board of Trustees has a copy of the list, but we could also review that here. But I want to point out that in the teachers unit, we've identified 40.7 FTE being recommended for reductions, but of that amount, 19.5 are currently vacancies. As a result of the positions that we're recommending, only 53% of them are currently filled positions. Likewise, with our administrators union, we're recommending the reduction of 7 positions at that level. 2 are vacant. So we're recommending, or we're 28% of those positions are currently not filled. At our upper management level, we're recommending 6.9 FTE reductions. 2.9 are vacant. Likewise, with our School Supervisors Association unit, 11.2 FTE, 7.2 are vacant. And with Teamsters Local 856, 56.4 positions and 27.3 are vacant. It was extremely important that we looked at our system as a whole and ensured that the decisions were equitable. I agree with the sentiment that any reduction is going to be difficult to adapt to, but I do think that as a community, this recommended list of salary reductions allows us to meet the demands of our fiscal solvency plan and still run great programs at our schools. Could you click the link for the recommended salary reductions just for a quick review, please? I just wanted to point out that the list of reductions are outlined here on the presentation and also on the board agenda, and that we have listed the position, the unit, and the location or the department that is impacted by the reduction. We've also ensured that we were transparent about what was vacant and what is currently filled. So these are the positions that we alluded to on the previous slide. Okay, we may return back to the presentation. While we're getting back to the presentation, I want to give you the raw numbers. Our fiscal solvency plan called for 19.719 million in cuts or in reductions to our budget. Through the work of our collaborative partners, we were able to identify 19.763 million recommended reductions tonight. Next slide. This chart shows the non-salary reductions that we're recommending for action tonight or for approval tonight. This is the result of the work of the contract subcommittee. The contract subcommittee identified just shy of 5 million in reductions. But in order to retain some of those positions that we spoke of recently, we did have to add another reduction to the list. And we are working out the details of that currently, but we are needing to identify a reduction in our LCAP budget for site allocations for $700,000. We do believe that the trade-off is worth it in terms of what we are able to recapture in next year's programming. And we do believe that we have successful tools to support sites to make the adjustments with a reduction in their site allocations. Next slide. Moving forward together and working together. So I wanted to emphasize that this, although these reductions or these recommended reductions are difficult to to address. We do believe that as a community, they are necessary, and as a community, we can come together and ensure that we are able to do it with grace, and also do it with minimal impact of program. So how are we going to support schools through this process? Well, we are ensuring that all schools are staffed based upon contractual requirements and educational guidelines. There have been very few cuts to the general classrooms. Actually, there haven't been any cuts to the base classroom program. We are also ensuring that students have all of the curricular materials and supplies that they need for daily instruction. That is not an area we discussed at all for reduction. We intend to make sure that schools have what they need and students have what they need. But we do want to recognize that there may be a decrease in the supplemental service staff at schools. And this is primarily due to budget limitations and this need to reduce. We also want to highlight that decisions are being made to ensure that the quality of instruction and the safety of our students is not compromised. We also have a plan for working with educational services to use those supplemental funds, the funds on the right side of the house, in order to ensure that where there are student needs or community needs within our schools, we can identify a grant source or a supplemental resource in order to address those needs and provide that programming. Next slide. So in order to get through these tough times, we need to work together. We need to work together not only for our future, but also for our students. So what can we do? Well, schools are funded on the average daily attendance. Unfortunately, if students aren't in school, we do not collect revenue for students that are not able to attend school. While recognizing that there are students who are ill and must stay home, and we do recommend that if students need to stay home for illness, that you absolutely continue the practice of doing that. But that if students aren't ill, they're in school every day. By making sure that students are in class every day, that will alone increase our revenues that we can then put back into programs in schools. So parents, we need you to prioritize daily school attendance and ensure that your students are in school each day unless they are ill. How can schools help? They can check and double check attendance records for accuracy. And I also want to add that schools can provide support to families when there are chronic absenteeism issues to support getting the student back to school. So at a district level, how can we support? Well, we're going to need to support our staff. And we're going to need to ensure that we have public-facing district attendance campaigns in order to try and generate additional revenue. So how do we do this? As a community, we have to approach success together, participate in meetings, share information, share ideas, both at the school level and the district level. We want to ensure that school and district leaders are aligning their goals and desired outcomes to support continued student success, and especially with the effective allocation of resources as we walk through these tough economic times. So I hope that this information has been useful for the decisions that need to be made this evening. I look forward to your questions, but prior to concluding the presentation, next slide, I'd like to invite Ms. Javetta Cleveland, our fiscal expert appointed by the County Office of Education, to conclude our presentations with a summary of our fiscal outlook. Thank you, Javetta.
Good evening, Board President Smith-Fold, Board of Trustees, Superintendent, staff, and community. Yes, I'm the fiscal expert appointed by the Contra Costa County Office of Education. Chief Business Officer Kim Moses has presented a fiscal solvency plan that was approved a couple years ago, actually, and a list of cuts for board approval tonight. The superintendent, along with the Chief Business Officer, Kim Moses, the Budget Committee and Cabinet have done a fabulous job with a very difficult process and has done the work, and the list of cuts is on the agenda. These cuts are needed and required to meet the actions outlined in the lack of going concern letter that was issued by the Contra Costa County Office of Education. The lack of going concern letter dated September 26, 2023 states that the district is at risk of insolvency. The district is projecting significant deficit spending if reductions are not made in the 24-25 school year. The County Office of Education set urgent and critical actions that need to be taken by the district. The district did take the action that was required on December 15th to attach a list of reductions along with the first interim budget. The county office requires the district to now submit a detailed report itemized list to be acted upon at the January 24th board meeting, which is this evening. The county office can withhold compensation of the members of the governing board of the school district and the school district superintendent for failure to provide requested financial information. Ms. Moses highlighted the district's multi-year budget. The multi-year projections clearly show that the district is upside down and the reserves will be depleted without budget reductions. The multi-year projections that include the budget reductions still includes a transfer of $28 million from the special reserve fund. So even with the reductions, the multi-year projections still require $28 million to be transferred from the reserve fund in order for the district to be able to meet its obligations in the current year and the subsequent 2 years. This is still a difficult road ahead for the district, even with the budget reductions. There is not enough funds in the special reserve fund to handle the budget if the reductions are not made. The total amount in the fund is $37 million, of which $28 million is already projected to be transferred over the next 2 years. There is not enough if the budget reductions that are in the board agenda tonight is not approved. As Ms. Moses has highlighted, there were significant impacts of the district's budget that really impacted the budget, and one is at the state level. The uncertainty in the state budget continues. The governor's January budget proposal only included a 0.76 cost of living adjustment, which was originally projected to be 3.9%. There's only 0.7%, not even a percent for the 24-25 school year. So it's worsened, this COLA has worsened the district's financial position. COVID funds that are ending and sunsetting, as Kim has mentioned, will impact the district's future. Those funds have allowed the district to kick the can down the road to protect the district and not make the cuts earlier. And now those funds will no longer be available. The board has a fiduciary responsibility to ensure the district is fiscally stable and able to meet the needs of the students. If the board fails to act, as I mentioned before, in a timely and reasonable fashion, the county superintendent will have to evaluate progressing to the next step in the intervention process, which has been provided to the district over the past few years. One, I mentioned suspending the board's pay. Two, moving my role from fiscal expert back to fiscal advisor, invoking a stay and rescind authority over the board's actions. Do not put these cuts off. I'm urging the board to make the reductions now. It is critical that the board implements its fiscal solvency plan that was approved along with the budgets over the last couple years. I don't question how tough the decision is to make significant budget reductions. I've been in those shoes many times before, but it is critical to ensure that the district stays solvent. Turn it back over to Kim.
Thank you, Javetta. That concludes our presentation.
Thank you so very much. Staff, do we have public comment? Remember, public will have 1 minute per speaker.
Yes, we do. Our first public comment is Veronica Diaz.
I can't even tell you my name in 1 minute. At De Anza, except during passing periods, there are only one set of restrooms open at any given time. The reason? We don't have enough campus safety to keep all the restrooms open at the same time. Now we are cutting campus safety positions. As I look down this reduction list, I see the very tenuous thread keeping sites running getting pulled at. I see the gardener vacancies that we bargained just last year. It was supposed to be a compromise. We can't afford more custodial staff on campus, but we can commit to additional gardeners to help keep up the grounds around campuses. Now they are being cut. I see the typist clerks at K-8s that act as attendance clerks, that act as scouts, that act as nurses being cut. And I see the scouts who get brought up every time the staff brainstorm solutions for helping boost our ADA. The scouts that get brought up as supports when we talk about our Black and Brown student communities, our English learners. I see Ms. Brenda Rankin, school community outreach worker who has been with this district since 1994. I don't want to see you get taken over, but I also don't want to see you cut yourself bit by bit, year by year, until you are nothing but a stump of a school district.
Our next public comment is Karina Ponce. Please unmute yourself.
Hello, board. I stand before you once again, speaking to you about our counselor cuts. Last year, we lost counselors because of the cuts. Why? They left because they no longer felt trust in the district. You have received a document from one of my colleagues, which clearly states that the proposed budget cuts from the business office are not feasible, causing unnecessary disruption to our students and loss of direct services to our students. Accepting these cuts will result in grievances and leave our students and families without counselors. I urge you to reconsider the proposed cuts to counselors and remember that our counselors are there for our students. We are mental health providers. We are there to support our students, especially now with the rise in suicides from our students. Please reconsider this. Thank you.
Our next public comment is Andre Shoemake Sr. Please unmute yourself.
Protocol being established. If you always do what you've always done, you will always get what you've always gotten. It's time for this district to do something different, and that something different is to stop perpetuating dependency. I want to honor Ms. Kim Moses for her brilliant presentations. I had the benefit of participating in the past 2 physical solvency meetings. It was wonderful. If we start looking at cutting school community outreach workers, these are the folks that's out there doing the parental engagement, engaging parents, trying to improve the attendance that we so badly need in this district. If we look at the cuts in food services, these are individuals that's meeting the food insecurity needs of our families and our custodial staff. These are the people that's making sure that our buildings are safe and secure daily. I submit to you, this is an inherited situation, but we have to do something different. We have to sustain our staff. Thank you.
Our next public comment is Jessica Ross. Please unmute yourself.
Hello. I deeply wish the counselors had heard about this plan that impacts 15 of our positions more than 2 days ago. We might have said this. Comparable counselor cuts were passed in its very meeting last year and were thereafter found to have violated the district's contractual obligations, resulting in successful grievances. I'm hoping to prevent that same mistake tonight. Every board member has a spreadsheet from me in their email with calculations that prove the non-viability of this plan. Specifically, the budget office's calculations are based on 500 fewer students than are currently enrolled district-wide and overestimate the number of counselors that can be cut by a full 2 FTE, unnecessarily disrupting an extra 7 schools, counseling teams, and communities. Please check the numbers before committing to the $640,000 that is being promised in counseling savings. Only $314,000 of that is contractually possible. And if you say yes to this agenda item tonight, you will be finding yourself in the same $327,000 hole for which you could alternatively find a contractual.
Our next public comment is Monica Pacini. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, I just want to say that I'm glad to hear that the elementary school community workers are not on that cut list any longer. However, There's a lot of my fellow coworkers that are. We are all needed. It is not just elementary, middle, or high school. All these positions are needed throughout the district. I heard all of our PAC committees mention how important the school community outreach workers are. This needs to be considered. Also, attendance and enrollment, we are such a big part. Although we do have some attendance clerks at the school sites, we are still required to participate in those conferences. Make sure that our students are coming to school, calling the parents on a daily basis. Whenever our names are thrown out there that we are getting cut, it's every year. However, they never hesitate to stop.
Our next public comment is Jean Kinster. Please unmute yourself.
Hello, board. I have been thinking about how we're coming on the 100th day of school in a few days. I have a student that's missed 25 days of school ill. That's a quarter if we round up to 100. I'm wondering how we can maybe capture the attendance money we're missing. I do know that parents yell at our attendance clerks because they think because they say, oh, they were sick, that these days don't count and they're excused. I really, really, really think we need to educate all of our parents about what Ed Code says about attendance so that they can work with us to make sure kids get to school instead of thinking arbitrarily just saying they're sick counts, because this is really hurting us a lot. And my heart goes out to you because you guys have a lot of decisions to make and no one's going to be happy. So I'm sorry about that, but thank you for doing the hard job.
Our next public comment is Guadalupe Enyana. Please unmute yourself. Please unmute yourself. And our last public comment is Arnold Hayes. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, hello, thank you. Work in the grounds department, and I've been with the district for over 30 years. Came to the district right after the last bankruptcy when certain people that we trust to lead this district and watch our money didn't and lied about it. And it's still going on to this day with what we are dealing with the people who run this district. So when you make cuts, start from the top. There's a lot of wasted space up there, a lot of people abusing their powers, not doing what they're supposed to do because there's nobody watching them. We need accountability in the school district, and that's why we are hurting so much with money. I'll cut my time short. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone. We are now going to move to questions. Board, we're going to do 3 questions for the first round, and if there are more questions needed, I will make sure to come back around again. Clerk Gonzalez-Soy, if you'd like to start.
Sure, thank you, President Smith-Foltz. Ms. Moses, Ms. Cleveland, thank you for the presentation. I have a few questions. I'll start with 3. Ms. Moses, you mentioned $700,000 that are being removed from side allocations in order to recapture positions that were originally on the list to be cut. Could you please tell us a little bit more what those positions are?
Yes, thank you for the question. In order to bring back the elementary school community outreach workers and the music teachers, particularly this final addition of the $700,000 was in order to bring back 10.4 FTE of music teachers. The cost of those teachers is about $1.2 million. So we were able to identify some funds, but we were still needing to utilize the LCAP site allocations in order to make up the difference.
Okay, thank you. We heard from a few counselors tonight Could you speak about, has staff already looked into that? And have we, could you just speak on that?
Absolutely. So approximately 2 weeks ago, the Business Services Office released the staffing and enrollment allocations for the upcoming school year. That process involves a formula set forth by the state that requires that we use our P1 annual attendance rates in order to create a budget to staff our schools. And looking at the 5-year trend of enrollment and attendance, it is projected that at our secondary schools, we are experiencing declines in enrollment at each school. And that is the reason for the reductions. The reductions on the list are 0.1, 0.2 at specific school sites, just slight reductions in order to account for the expected reduction in enrollment. However, I would also like to point out that we are required and bound by the contract to have one counselor for every 338 students. And we will ensure that we have one counselor for at least every 338 students. So if it does, if our trajectory changes based upon enrollment and students who are coming back to our schools, we will increase that allocation. Unfortunately, at this time, we cannot do that based upon the formulas that we're bound to in order to staff our schools.
Thank you, Ms. Moses. My last question. We heard a little bit about consequences, and in my comments, I will talk more about consequences, but let's say that in a different world, we had more time, and this board said, we don't want staffing cuts. What are the alternatives if there were no staff cuts? Like, can you give us a couple examples of what would the district have to do if there were no staffing cuts in order to have a balanced budget?
Well, the reality is 80% of our budget pays for salaries and benefits. We noticed tonight that our budget hovers around 320 million. And that means that when we look at the estimated percentages, only about 60 million of our budget is not going towards staffing and benefits. Included in that 20% is the cost to keep schools open. It's the utility costs, it's the cost of transportation, it's the cost of ensuring that we have contracts to repair things that are broken. And through the process of combing through those, we realized it was difficult to find even 5 million in cuts that were non-salary. It would be extremely difficult. We would probably have to be bare bones with dilapidated buildings and a reduction in services. And I don't even know that even under those circumstances, we could find enough money away from salaries in order to meet the needs to address the structural deficit.
Thank you, Ms. Moses.
Yeah.
President Smith-Folds, I'm done.
Thank you so much, Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy. Trustee Christian, go ahead with your 3 questions.
Yes, thank you, President Smith-Folds. My question is, from the top level, have we looked at, making, like a leader has to sacrifice in order to make things happen? If you ever read a book called 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, it basically tells you a leader has to give up in order to go up. Have we sacrificed, from the top of cutting? And you have to lead by the example. And if we haven't looked at the top and making sure the top is cut some or reduce some, taking a pay cut, have we considered a pay cut at the top level? So, I mean, those are things we need to look at. Mm-hmm. So, response.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So I appreciate that it's directed towards management. I want to say that in the cases of all of our other labor units, we can't consider those type of cuts without going back to the negotiations table and getting the cooperation of labor. In the case of unrepresented management, reductions in salary is not something that we actually discussed as a cabinet. However, what we have done as a cabinet is really analyzed all of those all of the positions, and we've made cuts that equate to 14%. That's more than 1.5 for every 10 administrators in the upper management level being reduced with these recommendations. So realizing that we need to operate leaner at the top, we have identified ways to do that. But to your point, no, salary reductions isn't something that we discussed this go round.
Okay. And my next question is, and I know you said, based on the attendance and everything is slow, what have we really done to really engage the attendance? What have we done? What have we sacrificed ourselves to really engage the attendance, and why these kids are leaving this district, or what's going on, or why they're not there? And have we considered the virtual school?
Mm-hmm. So I'll start the answer and then pass it on to Mr. Fleischman, if that's okay. But I'd just like to point out that the issues with chronic absenteeism are also directly related to the COVID pandemic. We haven't recovered from we haven't gotten back to pre-pandemic attendance levels. And it is something that we're aware of, but it also is something that is happening across the state. So I just wanted to start off by saying we recognize that there are specific root causes that we need to address. And I know that Mr. Fleischman's department has some things that they're working on to address that. So I'll let him speak to that.
Okay, my last question, which I kind of mentioned it, virtual school. Have we used virtual school to the phone to say if a student is sick? Well, if he's sick, he or she is at home, can actually log on to virtual school and be counted for attendance, instead of being missing totally. So have we looked at virtual school, really expanding virtual school to do what, use it to our fullness?
Hold on one second, Trustee Christian. CBO Moses, can Director Fleischman answer the question about attendance? And then we go back to the question about virtual school, just so we all stay on the same page.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you very much, President Smith-Folds. We have what is called a student attendance review team at the school site level. At the last principals meeting, Director LaShante Smith shared data with all of the principals with a list of all of the students at every school that have been chronically truant this school year, and working with those school sites to set up those student attendance review team meetings for each of those students as a first line intervention and to gather data regarding why those students are not attending school on a regular basis. That's the first line intervention. Once those meetings have happened, and if we don't see improvement in attendance for that student, it moves on to a district level meeting, which is called the Student Attendance Review Board, or otherwise known as SARB. This is a meeting that has always been in place. Since COVID, it has been virtual. We're moving this back to an in-person meeting. I think it's more impactful to meet with parents and with students in the same space at the same time, so that you can have a direct conversation as opposed to virtual. And there's a lot of data collection happening in these meetings, and we'll be coming to the board, I believe at the February 7th board meeting with a report out of the data that we've collected to this point with regard to root causes for absenteeism, and steps that we can take at that point to support not only individual families to re-engage with school, but also looking at these deeper trends to address those things at a broader scale.
Thank you, Mr. Fleischman. I'll now address your question about the virtual school. We are very fortunate to be able to have a virtual option for our students who choose that. Unfortunately, our state requires that families pick one school, so we cannot, if students want the virtual option, they actually have to enroll in the virtual school. And we are enrolling families as they show an interest. But there isn't an opportunity to create a hybrid to recapture attendance if someone needs a short-term virtual option. One of the issues that was brought up in one of the community meetings is the independent study option, but that is also limited by the state. I think we have a max of 10 days that we can use that for, and then that is no longer an option. So I appreciate you thinking outside of the box, and perhaps in the future there might be some way in which to address virtual options, but at this time it's not an option for students who are not already enrolled in the virtual school.
Thank you so much, Trustee Christian. Trustee Phillips, your 3 questions, please.
Thank you very much. I want to use my questions to get some clarity or the first round. So my first question is to Ms. Cleveland. Actually, my first and second questions. Did I hear correctly that if the board does not pass these cuts, that the superintendent of the county will, quote, evaluate next steps?
Correct.
You listed some possible options. Did I hear correctly that taking the district over was not one of those options?
I did not list that as an option. That is an eventual option if the district faces insolvency and runs out of cash. So that the county superintendent has the authority and responsibility to take all action needed to ensure the district can meet its financial obligations. And the superintendent is not limited to a list of those actions in the ed code.
At the risk of this being my third question, because I need clarity on what you just said, while I understand that ultimately the county superintendent has the authority to take over, but did I hear correctly in the options that you listed this evening, that if the board does not pass these cuts this evening, that taking over was not one of the options that you listed?
That's correct. The first step would be that I would become a fiscal advisor with stay and rescind authority.
Is that 2 or 3? Okay.
Thank you. We will come back around.
Okay.
Trustee Reckler, go ahead with your 3.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. So there's one pretty big bill that's due. And so I'd like you to talk about the tax issue. I don't know how public that is, but I'd like somebody to talk about the bill for taxes and how that further compounds what's in front of the board tonight. And then I also want you to talk about labor negotiations and where we are on that. And if the board does not take action tonight, what happens with labor negotiations?
Okay, thank you for the question.
CBO Moses, sorry, I'm a hot mess. Please excuse me. The first question, Trustee Reckler, your first question about taxes, that one we don't have enough information on yet. And CBO Moses, if I'm overstepping, please let me know. But because we don't have enough information on that one yet, maybe that question should be put on hold until we make sure that we are getting
point of order. It was publicly, point of order, it was publicly released how much we think is due. So at least that part of it can be discussed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hold on one second, Trustee Reckler. CBO Moses, do you believe that that question and the clarity that Trustee Reckler is looking for, do you believe that that should be discussed at this present moment or not?
No, I think I can give a general answer that might get at what Trustee Reckler, the spirit of what she's asking.
Okay, could you do that for me, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
So we create a budget with all of the things that we know in the moment. We also know that as the year progresses, as we find we sometimes find that there are new things that impact our budget that we did not anticipate. At the same time, we also find that there might be some savings that we also didn't anticipate, for example, vacancies that we cannot fill. So the question that you're asking about added expenses, what I think I'd like to say is that just as with a household budget, You don't anticipate that you might need to replace your hot water heater, but you do, and you have to figure out some way to put it in the budget. As a district, we do incur those kinds of issues where there are things that we did not budget for that we do have to fit in the budget. So I think that President Smith Folds is exactly right. The specific issue you cite, we need more information, and we should probably bring it back in a public forum. I believe it was shared in a confidential board memo. I don't believe it was released publicly, but I am happy to bring back information at a later meeting when it's agendized.
Okay, thank you. And can you address labor negotiations?
Absolutely. And unfortunately, when we look at that 3-year multi-projection, what we see is not only do we need to make reductions in order to address the structural deficit, but we also need to use our one-time reserves in order to ensure that we can meet the 3% requirement of the county and the state. So also I'd like to address what happens if we can't make our 3% reserve. We're talking about county oversight. The county oversees our ability to have a structurally acceptable budget, but there's also this requirement that we have those reserves on hand. So we're facing 2 issues. One is that the county wants to ensure that we do not go fiscally insolvent, but the second is if these reductions aren't made, and if we don't utilize our reserves, then we have another issue, and that is that we cannot meet that 3% reserve. So because of that, as we have discussions with our labor units, we are not able to really put a financial package on the table, because right now with the uncertainty in the budget, we don't know yet if these reductions are going to be approved tonight, but it's put us in a position with labor where we're unable to actually offer anything in terms of a salary or benefits package, which we understand is a need because we're trying to attract quality staff. Unfortunately, the issues with the budget means that right now we do not have anything to offer during the negotiations process.
Okay, if something also I want to apologize. If something's confidential, please mark it that way. I was not under the impression, and if it was, I apologize for that. That was not at all my intention at all to blow up something publicly if it was not supposed to be. So I want to be clear about that. Second is I want to come back to the school community outreach workers for a minute. And would you please be able to tell me where you started in terms of filled and unfilled positions and where we've ended up on filled and unfilled positions?
In terms of school community outreach workers specifically?
Yes, please.
Yes, okay. So I am looking at our our December version of this reduction list. And in December, we had a total of 33. I'm sorry, I'm needing to do quick math here. We had a total of 43.3 school community outreach worker positions on the reduction list. That was the full unit of school community outreach workers. The current list, as we are presenting for reduction tonight, and hold on, I'm switching between spreadsheets here. What we have is 16.3 FTE recommended reduction. So what we've been able to retain is the majority of the school community outreach workers, which land in our elementary schools.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, there was a staffing matrix released at one of the community meetings that I don't believe the board got. So I certainly would like a copy of that if possible. I'm sure other board members might want that as well. And would you be able to talk about specifically the West County Mandarin School and how you plan to manage a school with 2 sites, but there's only one person with an administrative credential? I don't see a AP or a second person with an administrative credential assigned.
Okay, I'll address the staffing matrix first. So I explained in the presentation, and I will certainly share it with the board, that as a process of making decisions regarding the reductions, the cabinet utilized a draft of what our previous staffing was allocated at and how we could equitably adjust the staffing matrix in order to make reductions in areas that were not required positions. The reason why that was shared publicly is because we wanted true transparency. We wanted people to see what guided the decision so that they can understand that it was applied equitably across the board, across all of our schools. I do believe that once we know the status of our budget, the fact that we don't know whether these reductions will be approved or not has kind of put us in a holding pattern in terms of completing our budget processes. But I believe that once we have a decision tonight about which way we're moving forward, the cabinet can come together and solidify that staffing matrix. And at that time, we can bring it back to the board for your approval. In terms of West County Mandarin School, they were not involved in any of the budget reduction discussions. And so I cannot share any information about the plan moving forward for West County Mandarin. I think that probably should be agendized to discuss with Educational Services, and then we'll need to align a budget based upon what the plan is for that school. But that isn't included in tonight's presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Board, that was the first round. Do we have other questions? Trustee Phillips, let's do another 3. Then I do have questions. Let me just get 1, maybe 2 out, and then we'll go to Trustee Phillips. Ms. Cleveland, can you give me a definition of stay and rescind?
Yes, I would have, as a fiscal advisor, I would be able to remove an item off the agenda and also reverse a board action on something on the agenda. So I would be able to reverse or stay or rescind an action by the board.
So let me just make sure I heard what you said. So if you get stay and rescind authority, it means that you can take the agenda and something that's on the agenda you can pull off.
Yeah, I could stay and rescind an action by the board. So if the board has taken action, I could reverse that action on an agenda item.
Thank you very much for that. CBO Moses. There were several different versions of this list. Am I correct by saying that the process, the intentionality of the process would be as transparent as possible, to be as collaborative as possible, to be as direct as possible in all ways until we got to this point? Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Thank you for that. CBO Moses, if you had to put a percentage from 0% to 100%, and this is going to sound facetious, but I don't mean it that way. How much, since you getting into this position, has been you cleaning up messes, period, percentage-wise? I would say
that is difficult to quantify, but what I'll say is that a majority of time has been spent with myself and the business services team in really working on internal controls. And the reason why we're focusing on working on internal controls is because we realize that some of these issues with the budget are as a result of us not having tight enough controls. So as we examine our issues and as we look at where we are in terms of our fiscal trajectory, we have had to spend some time looking at previous practices and ensuring that we're making shifts to improve those practices while also implementing internal controls so that we can have accountability for decisions and spending.
Thank you so much. I do have another question to piggyback off that, but I will wait to the second round. Trustee Phillips, your 3.
Thank you very much. My next question is for Ms. Cleveland. Our dance was cut short.
Ms. Cleveland, last year you had stay and rescind authority over the district and nothing happened. So what would be the difference if you got it again?
So my role as a fiscal advisor, I reviewed all of the district's purchase orders, contracts, and everything that was going to be placed on the board agenda. When there was an issue that I was concerned about, that was discussed with the chief business officer and the superintendent, and those items never made the agenda to the point where I would need to stay and rescind an item.
Thank you. My next question is this. And it relates to the counselors calling in and some of what Trust Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy said. Is it true? And this question is for Ms. Moses or Dr. Hurst, or whoever should answer, I don't know. Is it true that there are positions slated to be cut that the district is contractually required to have?
That is not true.
So the counselors, almost answered my third question. Whew, I pulled it back. I got one more.
Mm-hmm.
Ma'am, can we do a third round since this is such an important issue?
Most likely.
There has been a lot of discussion about cutting from the top. I'm just clarifying, I'm not advocating for anything, but did I hear correctly? And again, I'm not advocating for anything, I'm just clarifying right now. Did I hear correctly that there actually was no discussion about unrepresented management, which I think is like the superintendent and those kind of folks taking any salary reductions? Did I hear that correctly, that that was not even discussed?
You did hear that correctly.
Thank you. I think that was 3.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Trustee Reckler with your 3.
I'm sorry, I have to come back to this counselor thing again.
Mm-hmm.
So Ms. Ross sent in some pretty compelling data. One more time, I just have to hear this again. Some pretty compelling data about what is going to be required based on enrollment. And she even produced a grievance settlement letter of what needed to be added back after, in the mid-fall. So again, and she's challenging your savings by roughly half. Can you again speak to her numbers and explain your point of view versus what she has sent in?
Absolutely. Let me start with the numbers. So the reduction lists, you have several lists that were posted to the agenda. One of the lists actually estimates the amount per FTE of savings for the district. That is how we've been able to calculate a number that shows what the estimated amount of savings is. Estimated amount of reductions are as related to the positions that show up on this list. That calculation is done based upon an average cost of salary and benefits per position per unit. If you've looked, I know you have, looked at our salary schedules, every union has a different salary schedule and every salary schedule has a range. I can't speak specifically to the math that Ms. Ross provided, but I can speak to you about how the reduction amounts are calculated for the purposes of this county requested reduction. We use an estimated average salary and benefits cost for each position. We multiply that by the FTE of the position, and that is how we estimate the cost. Now, we absolutely realize that for each position, that is not going to be an exact number, but the formula has proven effective in terms of getting close enough to the target. So what you see as the recommended amount of savings on that line actually takes all positions in consideration, not each position separately. So when we talk about the savings, we're looking at savings of reductions of the entire unit. So that list is not meant for you to say, oh, if we cut 2 of these, we're going to save, you know, exactly $230,000. We can't have exact numbers in that way. So I do understand what the attempt is, but we don't look at savings position by position, although for the purposes of trying to show transparency and how that number of 15.1 million was arrived at, we did share the formula widely. So that's what I would say about the estimated savings, which is how it was pinned for those recommended reductions.
Okay, thank you. Now I'd like to flip over to non-salary reductions. And there's a couple of things I'd like to touch base on. The first one is utilities, which looks like a $300,000 savings. However, I am curious how PG&E's fairly substantial cost increase, I think it's like 13–14%, something like that. Was that figured in, or is the cost being given to households only and not businesses, which would be very difficult?
Thank you for the question. Actually, when we looked at the potential for savings and utilities as a contract committee, what we looked at in particular is summer utility savings. Last summer, our budget included at least $300,000, but substantially more than that, keeping the lights on because we had nearly every site open for student services in the summer. We are trying to reduce the number of sites that we have open this summer, and by doing that, we'll reduce our summer utilities costs. Now, you're correct. We do anticipate that we might actually have to look at our utility costs the other months of the year and make adjustments, as you've mentioned, but we did truly target only the cost of utilities in the summer and the decision to ask that programs be consolidated so that we're not running high utility bills at every site.
Okay, thank you. And then the other non-salary reduction item that I want to dig into is legal. And while I see a couple of little cuts to Lozano Smith, they pale in comparison to the $500,000 that you're going to take out of AALRR. And so I'm just curious, I mean, that is a ton of legal hours, a ton. So what is going to drive that reduction? What change in business practice are going to be made to knock that back, because those people get paid somewhere $365 an hour plus a para plus all the other little add-ons, that the little toppings on the cake that they like to charge.
Yeah, good question. So there's some work that needs to be done with that at the cabinet level. But what we do know is we consult with many different firms, and in some cases we're consulting with more than one firm for specific issues. What we think as a cabinet is that we can come together, put heads together, and find a way so that we're creating documents of shared information that we obtain from legal counsel so that it can be shared widely amongst the different departments, so that if issues arise and you've had the same issue that another department has already gotten a legal opinion on, that we have that living somewhere so that there doesn't need to be repeated calls to legal counsel. We also recognize that some of the issues that we're troubleshooting with legal, we think we could probably decrease the number of calls and consultations that we need to have. So there needs to be clearer planning at the cabinet level, but we are committed to making changes to ensure that we're reducing the number of hours that lawyers are being consulted on district issues.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, trustee Reckler. Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy?
Thank you, President Smith-Folds. Ms. Moses and Dr. Hurst, I wanted to go back to the question has been asked now a couple times about management pay cut, because not to contradict anyone, but I have a different recollection. I was present during a discussion, and Ms. Moses, you might have not been present. So I did want to offer a space for Dr. Hurst to respond to the question about management cuts and whether or not that was considered at any point, and if so, why not?
So absolutely. I'm actually looking at a document right now. Maybe this is the conversation that was between you and I, and maybe CBO Moses wasn't there, but there were a number of items, either low paying, medium paying, or high paying items. And one of the items that I know at least I discussed with you was potential of a reduction across the board for managers. I also remember referencing my previous district, and that's something that we had done in our previous district as well. So again, not contradicting anyone. I don't think CBO Moses was part of that conversation, but I do remember having that conversation with board leadership.
Thank you. Dr. Could you speak of the why that decision didn't happen though? Why did you decide not to bring that as a recommendation? Because you talked to me about impact.
Yeah, absolutely. There were actually a number of items that did not make it to the list. I mentioned several things to you, including not just reduction across the board for managers, but also school closure and some other items as well. For school closure, there was a conversation that this is not the right timing, that we needed additional time to have those important conversations with the community. And just for managers across the board, just the impact and whether or not that would be impactful and really impacting the budget.
Thank you, sir. President Smith-Folds, that's it.
Board, I'm going to ask 3 questions, and then we're going to have our final round. Okay, I'm going to ask 3 questions, and then we're going to have our final round. In our final round, let's go from 3 to 2. 3 questions to 2 questions in our final round. Ms. Cleveland, I have a question about what we just talked about. When you said you have the ability to pull items off the agenda, do those items have to be money related, or can you pull any item off the agenda?
I shouldn't really say pull it off the agenda, but I have the ability to stay and rescind an action on an item that can have a fiscal impact that further places the district at risk of insolvency.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
The second question is, and I don't know, CBO Moses, if this is for you or Ms. Cleveland, the path that we're on now, is that the only way out for us to maintain local control? Is the path that we're on now the only path for us to retain local control?
Do you want me to take that one? What I'll say to that is if we are deemed fiscally insolvent, we cannot retain internal control. And I've been using the term internal control because of the different mechanisms in which the county does influence, impact, and in some ways take on the decision-making responsibility for our matters of fiscal impact. If we aren't able to meet that 3% reserve, if we aren't able to implement these cuts to write this budget, we face that $54 million deficit at the end of 3 years. There is no way without these cuts that we'll be able to show the state or the county that we can meet 3% reserves. One of the first things that happen is FCMAT comes in to do an intentional, a really intense scrubbing of our books and our policies and our procedures and our controls. Being that that is the first step, what happens there depends upon the level, I believe, of what we're able to retain for ourselves and what is imposed upon us. I am new to the process, but I've been learning a lot. And I do know that what we need to focus on as a district with our budget is ensuring that we can meet our financial obligations. And without these cuts, we certainly cannot meet our financial obligations in the next school year.
Thank you so very much. My final question is, we heard from labor. How do we advocate together how do we kind of punch up, right? So how do we advocate together, punching up to the state or the county or whomever to really bring who we are forward and what we need to maintain, sustain, and to elevate our district? Do you have, and I'm not looking for specifics because I know it's something that we are talking about, but do we have a general plan of how we work together as a school community, as labor partners, as PACs, as board, and as cabinet to kind of punch up?
Mm-hmm. I can take that and just say, I think we're already starting that trajectory. I think that the last week, all of the input and the interest and the involvement and attendance with our community meetings and our labor meetings demonstrates to me that we do have a high level of community involvement and commitment to supporting with this issue. I think the way in which we level up is that we build upon that and we continue to have these spaces where we're having discussions, and that we also have continued reviews and updates as to what's happening. Budgets are not exact. We're giving you what we know as of right now. Things can change. And when things change, I think that we must be transparent, ensure that we continue that collaboration and make the decisions that are going to have the best outcomes for our students. I think we only do that together, but I also think we only do that by creating the spaces required to share and receive information.
Thank you so very much, CBO Moses. Board, this starts the final round and we're going to go down to 2 questions. Anyone need to have that final round? Oh, yes. Yes, ma'am. Hold on. Let me get my little piece of paper. Yes, ma'am. Trustee Abdu-Gar Parvo.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm a hot mess. You get 3 questions because it's your first time talking. So you can have 3 questions.
It's okay. I only have 2,
Oh,
so
great.
convenient. So I noticed during the presentation, you said that we wanted to increase attendance, and I was wondering during this, how does that apply, if it does, to like disciplinary actions such as suspensions? Like, would that also be something that has to be dealt with?
Thank you for that question. And absolutely, if a student is suspended from school, we do not collect ADA for the days of suspension. So I think that as a district, and this isn't my wheelhouse, but as a former principal, I do know that there have been targeted efforts to ensure that students have the support that they need and that discipline is done without suspending students from school. But I think that is very insightful, and that is also something that we need to keep an eye on to ensure that we're keeping students in school when we can have an option other than a disciplinary suspension.
Okay, now I have 3 because you said that there are people that try to make sure that the suspension is not an option. Who are these people? Because when I originally think of that question, I think counselors, but I know that we're making budget cuts for counselors, so.
Absolutely. So I'll start with what was created in our district a few years ago and rolled out and probably needs to be brought back is our discipline matrix. I know that Ms. LaShante Smith, who leads our positive climate department, continues to refer to the matrix when she speaks with district leaders. And this information is particularly going to school site principals, school site assistant principals, because they are generally the ones who handle the discipline. I'm not a secondary person, but I do not believe that counselors suspend. I believe that suspensions can only happen by the direction of the principal or the vice principal. And so that's the audience that's receiving the information. As it pertains to the discipline matrix, there is a range of ways to address problems. And the matrix is pretty cool because it addresses some of the discipline issues that are frequent in our district and a range of how you address those depending upon the severity of what's occurring. And it really emphasizes restorative practices so that instead of actually suspending students from school, you're doing things like restorative circle and working to address the behaviors and support the students rather than keep them out of school.
Okay, thank you. I was also wondering, I know it was kind of briefly addressed in the presentation, but I'm wondering how like these budget cuts and salary cuts for like especially positions that are not filled right now, how will that impact the teacher shortage?
Very good question. So the reality is that we do have vacant teacher positions that we do need filled. I think addressing the teacher shortage is a staffing issue that is much wider than our district. I think on the grand scale, what we need to do is find ways to attract young adults such as yourself into our profession. I think this starts with our teacher preparation programs, outreach at the universities. But I also want to highlight, I think we can start this at the high school level through our pathways and our CTE programs by maybe looking into creating a teacher pathway if we don't have one already, and enhancing that so that we can start to grow our own from our community.
Man, I wish we had 4 questions. It's okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so very much. Those were great questions. Trustee Christian, you have 2 questions. Okay, let me hit Trustee Phillips first because I saw his hand originally, and then I will go Trustee Christian, and then I don't think there's any on this side. Okay, Trustee Phillips.
I can wait for him because he might ask one of my questions and then I can get all 3 of them done.
All right, Trustee Christian, go ahead.
Okay, my question is, and it's based on what I said earlier, about at the top with the cuts. Will we consider the cuts at the top as well? It should be no area that is left undone. So we need to look at the top. So I'm asking that question.
Okay. As someone who's been in the district for 18 years now, I have probably served at every level of management and different positions. I understand the concern to be lean at the top, but I also have a concern that if we don't have appropriate leadership structures, that a district of our size will begin to have issues of implementation of program and carrying out of duties and accountabilities at a grander scale. We have 54 schools. We have about 3,000 employees or more, actually more. And when you have that, you need to maintain levels of responsibility, levels of accountability, and you need upper management to guide that. Now I hear exactly what you're saying, that we may need to look more there for cuts. But if we actually compare to other districts of our size, we're actually not overstaffed when it comes to upper management. And we're also not, we're not attracting people because we have the highest salaries, because we don't. And so as we need to ensure that we have upper management to guide our district, we also need to be competitive in that area as well. And I also want to circle back because as soon as Dr. Hurst referenced the list, he is absolutely right. We started with a list of about 30 ideas to consider for reduction, and the reduction of management salaries were on that list. However, we didn't have deep conversations about whether that was a reality for us, because understanding that every other unit has to negotiate for that to happen, with the 8 of us sitting at the table making that decision, we didn't feel like that was the appropriate way in which to have those discussions about potential reduction. I think where we landed is it might be something that we discuss for next time, as we may also need to discuss that with other labor units. And now that I am a member of cabinet, I'm not trying to say we need to retain, you know, I'm not advocating either way. I'm just saying that if we're going to entertain reductions, given that our management salary is not as competitive, it's the same issue we have with our teacher salaries and our classified salaries. If we continue to cut, we may not be able to attract qualified, talented managers to lead us to the success that we all are trying to achieve together.
Okay, and let's see, Jovetta, ask you a question. So we all are here. So tonight depends on everything, right? What we must do, right?
Yes.
And so tonight's the only night that everything goes from here.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Trustee Christian. Trustee Phillips, your 2 questions, please.
Dr. Hurst, one of the big projects in our district is the strategic plan. And a main goal of that strategic plan is to increase academic performance for our children. Can you please speak for a moment in depth about how these proposed cuts will affect the strategic plan to move our children forward?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely going to have an impact. What I've been sharing with board leadership and staff, I have been through this before in another district. I don't think we'll know the impact until next year, to be very honest with you. But I think we have an obligation to start having certain conversations. So in all these community forums, one of the things we've been bringing up is for us to realize the vision, we have to start having conversations at the legislative level. You heard Veronica Diaz talk about that as well. And not just at the legislative level, I think around the community. We don't have the resources, and I think I've shared with the board that matrix in order for us to achieve our vision. There are certain things that have to be in place. One of those pieces is resources, and we're lacking that, so we have to find the resources someplace else. I did share with the community in 2 forums that there have been asks from labor about engaging the conversation with our state superintendent around how do we bring in resources? How do we have revenue generated for us? So we did reach out to our state superintendent. We are looking forward to having that conversation, but not just with him, with our county, but also with other people that's in charge of large grants. But you're absolutely right. It's going to be impactful for us because we do have a lack of resources. We don't know how that's going to really hit us next year, but we have an obligation to do some outreach right now at the legislative level and other people in charge of big money, sir.
Thank you. This is one of those topics that could go on with questions all night, but I know we can't do that. My last question, unless we are graced with another round, this is a very controversial issue. I heard that there may have been or may be internal conversation between yourself and board leadership or somebody regarding school closures. that came up in this conversation. Can you please speak to what those conversations are so the board has an idea of what is going on, the whole board, in this department?
And so what I can share is that it wasn't just between myself and board leadership. It was really a conversation that ensued at one of our contract committee meetings. Labor partners were there as well, board leadership and myself and staff. And really the conversation was that we have to be able to look at everything. Like every conversation has to be on the table. But we also knew that the timing is important as well, and understanding that this is a really sensitive topic about school closure. Trying to have this conversation now or mid-year in the school year is not the appropriate time to have those conversations. So we really have to develop a timeline just to begin those conversations and give us plenty of time. But the conversation was that we need to be able to look at everything as a staff and as labor partners together.
Thank you.
Anyone else have a final round questions? That would be 2 questions. CBO Moses, I do have one last question. On the long journey to March, this is a step to that journey to March. From now until that journey and post that journey, am I correct to understand you are implementing things like bringing back Budget University to be able to help educate the whole community about how school budgets work, because they are incredibly complicated? Am I to understand that the budget subcommittee is still happening and it's going to have more meetings to March and past March to look further at contracts, to go back and to go deeper into the 4,000s and the 5,000s to find any savings that we can? Am I to understand that you are also going to have other community meetings to keep the community informed and to hear suggestions, comments, concerns, impacts about the decisions that are made, so then we are able to put in place resources, strategies, anything to help mitigate that amount of harm? Am I correct about those 3 things? And more, I'm sure there's more, but am I correct about those 3 things?
Yes, you are correct.
Thank you so much, CBO Moses. Board, I appreciate the in-depth level of questions that we had tonight around this topic. This is not the only time we are talking about budget. Budget is forefront. We talked about budget all January. We will continue to talk about budget to and past March. Now we are headed to a motion. Is there a motion to approve the non-salary reductions of 4.6 million and salary reductions of 14.1 million as defined in the fiscal solvency plan? Do I have a motion?
I'll go ahead and move non-salary reductions.
Thank you, Trustee Reckler. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy. Board, we are going to make comments. Those comments are going to be 2 minutes long. We are going to start. Is there anyone that would like to start those comments? Trustee Reckler, go ahead, please.
Thank you. So this is not new. It's not new. The only time I've been in the district since 2005, the only time the district was on stable footing was from 2012 to 2016. That's the only time. In 2012, we paid off the loan and we got rid of the state trustee to 2016, and then there was a slide again. So this has been this is not a surprise. I do want to address enrollment though, and that is that there are more kids here in West Contra Costa Unified School District jurisdiction than ever before. In 2014 to 2015, there were 31,821 students, 28,958 were district, 2,862 were charter, and 22 to 23, 25,737 district, 7,221 charter, adding up to 32,958. So there are more students here now in jurisdiction than ever before. You need to go get those students. That is they're here. You have to go get them. Plus 539 students transferred out. That's in 22-23. I don't know what it is now. And we don't even have a count on what the privates and the homeschooling number is. So students are here at least to get enrollment. Attendance, we don't have that number of where you're trending. That is a statewide issue. But once again, it's all about building relationships and having parents and students understand why it's so important to come to school and to have, I will absolutely admit that the pandemic absolutely disrupted that relationship, but that also is key because you have very few levers that you can control. That's basically it. Kids coming in and how often they attend. That's pretty much it. I mean, it's great to have state support and everything like that, but here we are 20 years later and we're basically in the same, still underfunded. Thank you.
Trustee Reckler, I want to make a correction and make sure that you're still going to motion. Motion to approve the non-salary reduction of 5.6 million and salary reduction of 14.1 million. Will your motion stand?
Yes, thank you for that correction.
Clerk Gonzalez-Floyd, your second stands?
Yes.
Thank you so very much. Now moving on to other board comments. I see Trustee Christian, go ahead.
Yes, based on everything tonight in which we are on the brink of, of cuts, I would suggest, that even top management, that you look in your heart to see where you are. A good leader goes up, he gives up and go up, but, to look at the fact that if I gave up when I was a safety staff at El Cerrito. What I'm getting now, I have to work another job over in Oakland, but I know I gave up. But my heart was here to serve the students and this community because I'm from this community. I'm from here. And I care about this district. And I want to see this district, move forward, that we begin to invest using our properties, using everything to bring in revenue into this district. We got to do some better things. We got to think outside the box and connect with our legislators and our people and say, hey, we need some help. We need some help. And so here we are, and it breaks my heart on everything about what's about to happen. I wish I could win a lotto and give the money here to help this district. But I tell you, deep in people's hearts, in our hearts, we got to look at, are we doing the best that we can? So I leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Trustee Christian. Clerk Gonzalez-Floyd, go ahead.
Thank you, President Smith-Folds. So I think that alongside a lot of people, I've lost a lot of sleep thinking about tonight. It's been months in the making, and I know that this decision we're not making lightly. I wish, honestly, we still had more one-time money to cover this, right? Because it's not about pushing the problem. It is, but it's about the impact these decisions are going to have on kids, right? Cutting one teacher, one staff member is going to have a negative impact in our schools, one contract. So I'm not going to sleep well tonight or in the near future either, because I also know that tonight we're cutting 122 FTEs. This is people's lives who are going to be changed forever. They're losing their job, right? And that also is having an impact on our schools and students. So having to be from the House of Labor and make this decision tonight, which I will, is horrible. And on top of that, we have to take in consideration, what is the alternative? And that's why I started with that question tonight. Because even if we were to vote no tonight, like, what is the alternative? Do we cut other people? other 122 FTEs that are not currently on the list? Do we close schools? Which to me has an even greater impact on students and families and staff. So the consequences, we lose our pay, it's $800 a month. I mean, has an impact on my family, but ultimately it's not about us. Like, that's not my problem. My challenge is the alternative that's gonna have on our kids. So to me, I don't have a choice. We have to vote for these cuts tonight. Thank you.
Go ahead, Trustee Phillips.
Just to clarify, we're taking 2 votes, right?
Sir, we're taking 1 vote.
And then we're gonna have a second vote on the salary.
It's all 1 vote, sir.
Can you restate the motion?
So the motion is to approve the non-salary reductions of 5.6 million and salary reduction of 14.1 million as defined in the fiscal solvency plan.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
That's okay.
That last part. I asked a lot of questions tonight because this is a very important issue. I understand that when you're talking about cuts, it's really a no-win situation. And it's hard for staff to put together a package that pleases everyone. But I do have some concerns about the package that has been put together this evening. One, I did hear that there is an option for no staff cuts. Now, it was also said that that option would mean a bare bones system. The question that I would ask if I could is if there's an option between what we're doing and no staff, if there's what we're doing is A, and then no staff cuts is B, there's something in the middle. And I would have liked to have known what that is. I'm concerned about the idea of eliminating positions that we are contractually obligated to have. And I'm also concerned about the impact of this on the strategic plan, because that's why we are here. So this one is honestly, it is a tough one for me. I look forward to hearing what everyone else has to say. But thank you for the presentation and answering of the questions this evening.
Thank you so very much, Trustee Phillips. Go ahead and start my time. It's a pregnant pause. I'm trying to figure out exactly how to start. Yeah, pregnant pause is like you have a long pause and then well, you said it. I want to take a minute to say thank you to CBO Moses and her staff. And I also want to take a moment to say thank you to Labor and former President Gonzalez-Hoy and the superintendent. This road was bumpy. This road was unsettling at every step of the way, but I have to say that your level of leadership, all of you that I've mentioned above, your level of leadership was awe-inspiring. The fact that the hard conversations happened with such integrity, love, and care just shows that when we have conversations together, we have conversations that produce solutions. Even if those solutions are not what we all want, it's what we all understand to a degree have to be done. This degree that has to be done and this point means that we have to keep people away from us that may not have our best interest in mind. We have to be able to retain control. And the control that we're retaining is to make sure that our students are protected and safe by the decisions that we make together. Tonight is not easy, and I don't think it was meant to be easy, but tonight is necessary. I think that when you have people that sit on this dais and agonize over decisions that have to do with March 15th last year and the year before that, there is a level of understanding that whatever we say tonight, we say because we have insisted that the work be done. We have wanted, and I'm going to take a little presidential privilege here to continue. The majority of the board for several years now have asked that the district does deep dive work on their budget, have real conversations around how to cut away from kids. The majority of the board has voted for many years that that cannot start with staff, because staff impacts our children every single day. We asked for a lot of work to be done, and former President Gonzalez Hoy said, let's get this budget subcommittee back together. Let's invite all of labor. Let's have these meetings recorded in public so people can come and ask their questions. Let's give the space to where we can have the real conversations to get to a point of understanding. That wasn't easy, but you did it because of leadership. And you did it because we had to come to some area of transparency that the community has never seen before. We had a caller call in and say, if you continue to do the same thing, you'll get the same thing. CBO Moses, what you did is not the same thing. You pulled back the curtain and you put everything on the table and you said, let's talk about it, let's look at it, let's have a conversation about it. Labor, you did not do the same thing. You said, we're coming and we're going to ask our hard questions and we're going to want answers and we're going to talk about it. Superintendent Hurst, you did not do the same thing. You held the space for these meetings to happen and you encouraged your staff to be in deep conversations with each other about how you can be as lean as possible to ensure that what's happening for our students continues and gets better. The majority of the board, you did the hard work. You went to your meetings, you asked questions, you looked at the budget meetings, even if you were not there. I know a lot of you watched it. I say all of that to say this. Tonight is not easy for anyone, but we have to keep them away. I'm complete. Board, we have just finished comments. We are now going to go to the vote. Again, we're voting to approve the non-salary reductions of $5.6 million and the salary reductions of $14.1 million as defined in the fiscal solvency plan. We are going to start with our student trustees. Student trustee Pal Carr, your vote, ma'am?
No.
Thank you. Student trustee Abdugar Parvo. Is that right?
Abdu Kaparo.
Abdu Kaparo. Abdu Kaparo, your vote, ma'am?
Yes.
Thank you. Trustee Phillips, your vote, sir?
Can you come back to me, please?
Yes. Trustee Christian, your vote, sir?
Yes, can you come back to me?
Sure. Trustee Reckler, your vote, ma'am?
Reckler, yes.
Thank you. Trustee Phillips, your vote, sir?
President Smith Foltz, I can vote. Clerk Gonzalez Hoy, yes.
Thank you, Clerk Gonzalez Hoy. Trustee Phillips, your vote, sir?
Yes.
Thank you. Trustee Christian, your vote, sir?
Yes.
Thank you. And I'm a yes. Board, thank you. We are now moving to.
President Smith Folds, could we take just a 5-minute recess?
Absolutely. Everyone, we will be back at 9:52. Thank you, board. Board, we are resuming at 9:54. Pardon us for being 2 minutes late. We are now moving to consent item C5.
Point of order, I think you have to extend the meeting.
I think we will. You are right. Board, can I have I would like to extend the meeting to 10:30. I don't think we're going to use all of that time, but let's go ahead and see if we can, if we don't have any discussion items, we just have consent, comments, and board reflection.
President Smith Folds, I move that we extend the meeting till 10:30.
Thank you so much. Can I get a second? I will second that motion. Let's go to the vote. Trustee Pal Carr. The motion is to extend the meeting to 10:30.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Trustee Abdu-Kaparov. Abdu-Kaparov.
Yeah.
Abdu-Kaparov. Thank you, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
Your vote, ma'am. To extend to 10:30.
Yay.
Thank you. Trustee Phillips, your vote? No, sorry, I'll come back to you, Trustee Phillips. Trustee Christian, your vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Trustee Reckler, your vote?
Reckler, yes.
Thank you. Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy, your vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Trustee Phillips, your vote? Thank you. And I'm a yes. We're going to extend to 10:30. Trustee Reckler, you pull consent item C5 for discussion. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yes, I don't have any questions. I just have some discussion on this item. And that is that I had a constituent contacted me twice about being appointed to the 7-Eleven committee. First time didn't make it. Second time I was really shocked not to see this guy's name on the list. So I contacted him and I was like, what's going on? And he said, I got a call. Can I meet twice a month? I never heard anything back. So went back and forth with Mr. Freeze and superintendent. And so what happened, and this may have happened, the reason why I'm talking about this is that this may have happened to other people. And so I just want to make it public. The outreach was done by the consultant. And this particular person just didn't know why they were being contacted by a consultant rather than our school district, and so never responded to the outreach. And so I just want to make that public for anybody else who may have, because when I was looking at the list, it looks like a lot of people were non-responsive, and it may just have been that they were contacted by some weird realtors and didn't know what it was about. So that is just why I pulled that item. And I hope that all of those people get contacted by district personnel to thank them for stepping up and filling out the application. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you so much. Anyone else have any discussion points to this? Any staff want to speak to this or?
President Smith Folds.
Yes.
Sorry, I got ahead. I was going to make a motion.
Oh.
I
You
apologize.
want to make your motion? You want to wait a minute?
No, it's okay. I apologize.
No worries.
I appreciate the comments with Trustee Reckler had made, and we did go back and forth today and talk about this issue. And typically staff does reach out to our committees. In this particular instance, we had staff that were out, that were ill. We wanted to get this done before the holidays and in the new year. So we did rely on our consultant that has been working with this committee for over the last year and a half to do the initial outreach to these individuals. And they had tried on several attempts, but it is no excuse for district staff not reaching out. And so we will reach out to those members that had applied for this committee and encourage them to participate as a community member on the committee.
Thank you so much, Mr. Freeze. Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy, you were willing to move this item?
Yes, thank you. I move that we approve the 7-Eleven committee membership as proposed.
Thank you so much. I'll second that. Board, we're going to go to any other comments? Any further comments? No, let's go straight to the vote then. We are doing the motion has been made to approve the membership of the District Facility 711 Committee. We're going to go with our student trustee Paul Carr.
Could you repeat the motion?
Sure. We are trying to approve, we're voting to approve the membership of the district's Facilities 711 Committee. And if you need any more detail, let me know.
Yeah, could you provide some more detail?
Sure. So this, and Mr. Freeze, keep me honest with this for a minute. I'm going to try to summarize it. The 711 Committee is a committee that's set up to look at properties that the district has in surplus. So there's some properties that we no longer use. So let's say Harmon Knolls, Seacrest.
You're right, it's Seaview.
Seaview. So there's a couple of properties that we no longer use. So this committee is set up to look at those properties and say, should we keep them? Should we lease them? Or should we sell them? And then what's the impact of doing any of those? What's the fiscal impact? What's the impact to student learning? If we sell them, it's only a one-time money that we get for selling them because you don't get money over and over again. If you lease them, it's kind of like you can get more income coming in, but they have these conversations. And then they're going to bring back to the board suggestions about what we should do with these 5 or 6 properties. What we're doing now is we're motioning to approve the membership to make sure we have enough people who are in compliance to be on the 711 committee. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. So that's what we're voting on. If we should approve these people to be on the 711 committee so we can then have more conversation about what we do with our surplus property.
Okay, thank you. I vote yes.
Thank you. Okay, this is my last time for the night. I'm going to try it. Abdu-Gar Parvo. I messed it up again, didn't I? Tell me again, friend.
Abdu-Gaparo.
Abdu-Gaparo.
Yeah.
Okay. Abdu-Gaparo. Trustee Abdu-Gaparo, what's your vote, ma'am?
Yay.
Thank you so very much. Trustee Reckler, your vote?
Reckler, yes.
Thank you. Trustee Phillips, your vote?
Yes.
Sorry, I went out of order. Trustee Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy, your vote?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you very much, board. I appreciate it. We are now going to, there are 0 discussion items for tonight. We are going to comments from the Board of Education and future agenda items. We're going to give everyone 2 minutes. 2 minutes for comments, and then we also have board reflection and feedback after that. So we're going to get 2 minutes for your board comments, reflection, and feedback. Again, to remind everyone, it's where we did one area that went really well and one area that we need to change or point of growth or improvement. So we have board comments, and then we're going to have our reflection and feedback and stick to those parameters. Board, let's go. We have 2 minutes for board comments. Would anybody like to start? Trustee Phillips, go ahead, sir.
So I want to clarify a few things. Well, one thing in particular, I asked questions during the budget item to make sure that I had the information that I needed to make a vote. There really was not any advocacy in my questioning. It really was me trying to make sure that I have the information. What I do want to say, and it's not because I'm playing favorites, but I actually don't support cutting salaries for the superintendent and the folks in the cabinet. I think in this context, it should be and should have been a discussion, but I personally don't support it. I don't support it for a couple of reasons. I don't think that their salaries are necessarily competitive, which is what Ms. Moses brought up. But the other thing that I want to point out is, for the first time in a very long time, a lot of the people who sit at that table are people who've been here for many years. People who are teachers here, people who are principals here, people who have been here. And in the interim, before they got here, all kind of people were coming in and out of this place from other places and getting paid. And so to ask folks who have been here and who have taken salary cuts because they've been here to do that, I don't really think that that's fair. And it's not something that I support. So I just want to share that because I think it needed to be said.
Thank you, Trustee Phillips. Trustee Reckler, go ahead, please.
Thank you. So first, I want to say that I now see a revised agenda, so I apologize that before. I don't know. Anyway, it's behind us, but I do now see a revised agenda. I want to thank everybody for their support, people calling in, contacting me personally about the censure resolution. Your support means a lot to me, and so please know that and know that I really thank you for speaking out. Next, I want to talk about Go Public Schools had a data walk, which was excellent, and they published this great little book, and I've just deposited 20 or so copies with Genesis to hand out. If you haven't been through it, you should. This is an excellent example of how data should be presented. It's really, really good. And it also has takeaways and next steps. So like, what do you as a parent or community member do about this? It's actually really excellent and, you know, should serve as a good guidance. Please mark memos confidential if they are confidential. I'm always the one that asks the confidential be taken off before they get published out. So I would know if it was confidential. So if you would please do that. I think there's an opportunity for in-house counsel on the Friday memos. On the Friday memos, you're looking at me like I'm crazy. In-house counsel. I really think you should look at having in-house legal counsel. I know that Trustee Phillips has brought this up many times before, but I think you would save money. I really do. And I think that you need to put some time into looking at that. I want to thank you for the community forums, and I think that you should have more. They were all attended by staff and high-powered parents, which tells me that the word was not yet out there about what was going on with the cuts. So I think it's good to do that. And finally, I just want to remind everybody to stand up for bullies. Thank you.
Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy.
Thank you, President Smith-Folds. I completely agree that we got to stand to bullies, and when we know that something's wrong and not right. So I completely agree. President Smith-Folds, I want to thank you for tonight and for your leadership. This is the second hard meeting that we've had, and you've led us with integrity and with your values up front. So I want to thank you for that. I want to thank our staff, Ms. Moses, your staff, cabinet, Dr. Hurst. I know this has not been easy. You all are working from 6 a.m. to 5 a.m. on these issues, and I know that all of you care deeply. So I want to thank you for that work. I also want to share that I think part of the conversations that maybe were not brought to the full board, but were public, so anyone can go back and watch them, were about a few things that I don't support, which is cutting sports, right? Which was discussed, cutting pay, which also was something that people in the room also didn't agree with. And closure of schools, which I will never vote for. So those decisions to me lead to a higher impact on students. And that's ultimately how we had to base our decisions. What was gonna have the hardest impact? The budget committee is gonna continue. Ms. Moses, I'm sorry, but I know that you're looking forward to the work. We're going to continue to look for more cuts. Unfortunately, this is not the end of the road, which is the worst part of it all, right? So we're going to continue to do this work. But everybody watching, everyone impacted, I just want to end by saying I'm sorry that the system continues to fail us from every level. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy. Thank you for your kind words. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your guidance and support through this entire thing. Trustee Phillips, I want to thank you for staying on the dais and for us to continue the work. We've had two board members leave. One told me why, one did not. So we have to have 3 board members on the dais to continue to act as a board. So I appreciate you staying for the next couple of minutes to finish this out. Unfortunately, student trustees, you guys don't, you count and you're very valuable, but we have to have 3 elected board members, not appointed board. You were elected too by the student body, but we need 3 elected board members for the community to be able to retain the ability to continue a meeting. So that's what's happening now. Hennessy's friend, you might as well cut my clock off because it's going to be a minute. Just, I want to say a couple of things. I know that we have all praised CBO Moses, and she deserves every single bit of that praise. So I cannot emphasize it enough. Thank you. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for jumping in with both feet and doing the hard work that should have been done before you got here and got in this position. You got in and you came in and you said, here we go. And you took us, the board, you took the community, you took labor, you took district staff and cabinet with you all the way. And you said, this is how we're going to navigate through. But it's not all on you. And I learned this from a very cool cabinet member. We cannot say that it's all on your back because it's not. That puts you in a position that's a non-win. This is all of our problem. This is not your problem. You are the expert in the room and you are there to help guide us and navigate us, but this is an everybody problem. This is not a CBO Moses problem, and it won't be a CBO Moses solution. It will be an everybody solution and an everybody commitment to changing the internal controls, changing the external expectations, changing the way we've always done things to always be where we are. This is what change looks like. It's uncomfortable, but it's not impossible. Thank you. Superintendent Hurst, thank you for putting the people in the position to do the work. We have to have confidence in the people that we rely on to give us the information to make the decisions at a policy level that impacts these students and our employees every single day. And because of the people that you have in position now, we are able to believe in what we are being told. We may all not sleep well tonight, but we all can sleep with blessed assurance that we know what we got told tonight. I think the biggest thing is that CBO Moses and the district and the cabinet and the board are committing to making the necessary changes that refuse to get us back to where we are today. This is the last time we'll go around this mountain because we're putting in place things that will prevent that from happening. No matter who occupies these seats, we're putting in the things that will prevent that from happening again. And that's part of our job. So thank you for that. The final thing, Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy is above reproach. He was above reproach as a teacher. He was above reproach as a union leader. He was above reproach as a board trustee and above reproach as a board president, and now as the board clerk. Anything to the contrary is just a spin of the narrative. And I cannot and will not sit here because you are too kind not to speak on your own behalf, but you are above reproach. There is no conflict in any interest that you have in this district. I will say it every day and twice on Sunday. Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy is above reproach. To the community member that came in and spoke about the ropes, thank you. Our intention was never to block you off from us. That's never what we wanted to do. Once you brought it to our attention, it got taken down immediately because we have a high value of reasonable hospitality. And we want to make sure that everybody knows that and we show that. Tomorrow, we have a board retreat. Please tune in, check the agenda on the website to find all of that information. I want to thank everybody in this room and everybody that's on Zoom. Thank you for walking with us. Thank you for the grace. And we ask for the trust. We won't go around this mountain again. I'm complete. We are now going to do board reflections and feedback. Again, board, if you have anything to say, it's 1 point of growth and one thing that we did well. Anybody have anything to say? This is not mandatory. Trustee Phillips, go ahead, sir.
One thing that I think went well in this meeting was the question and answer. I actually thought that it was frank. I thought it was respectful, but I also thought that the answers were frank and direct. And I appreciate that. So that's kind of for the folks who are asking the questions, but also for the folks who are answering it. I thought that it went well. One thing that I think we could use growth on, I think that there are way too many personal comments. Some of the comments are direct, like names are actually called. The majority of them are like backhanded comments that board members make to one another. So, yeah, that's what I think.
Thank you so much for that feedback, Trustee Christian. Nope, sorry, Trustee Phillips. Trustee Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy, do you have anything?
Would you mind coming back to me, please?
Absolutely. Student trustees, do you have anything that went well and anything that you would have as a point of growth for this meeting?
I think it was really admirable for all of the board to really try to see this from every perspective and every angle to really find a solution. However, I'm really kind of disappointed that we couldn't have more time to really like analyze the situation. And it kind of felt like today you had to make a decision without, and I wish it didn't have to be today. But otherwise, I think it was a very interesting first meeting.
That's probably the best adjective, ma'am. It was an interesting first meeting. Ms. Parker?
Yeah, so I agree with my fellow trustee here. I think that this was a very heavy first day. A lot of material was covered, of which I wasn't very familiar with. So I would have liked to see some more specificity on the budget plan, such as where these cuts would take place, like specific positions and who would be deciding them. It was just something that I wanted to know more about before I voted yes or no. I also feel like I don't feel like I have a good conscience voting for the budget cuts. I feel that our district, a lot of the fundamental issues that are presented are because of our underfunded system, and I don't think that taking away money would be the answer. But as for a positive, I think that the structure of the meeting was very well done. I like the structure of the public comments and the questions. I think that those were interesting and they were well timed after each subject was brought up. So yeah.
Thank you very much. Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy?
Thank you. I'll be brief. President Santos, I feel like for a positive, the meeting was ran really well. And I think to go a little bit further, you asked for clarification if you needed it, which I think is very helpful. I think for an area of growth, I think that some of us, without being direct or indirect, I think that some of us, including myself, can do a better job at being prepared. and attending our one-on-ones, and going to meetings to ask detailed questions, because we just don't have enough time in these meetings to ask the questions. So I think that all of us, including myself, can do that a little bit better.
Thank you so much. Everyone, what I think went well is that we had hard conversations in what I consider to be a soft way. I think that that's a growth. I mean, I think that's what we did well. As a point of growth, I think we need to grow in a lot of areas. I think that the board retreat tomorrow will help that. I think other retreats that we have aid in that growth. I think that we have to continue to work as a board on standards that we're going to keep and that we are going to hold each other accountable to. I think that if we don't check each other, we don't get checked. I think that we as a board have to check each other. That's our only checks and balances. We check each other. If we're going to the left, we tell each other, we have these conversations, and it doesn't always feel good, but it's what we have to do. I think that we do hear from our community. Our community is very much in the arena of calling us on what we need to be called on. But sitting on this dais, we have to hold each other to the standard that we have all agreed upon. We all have to do that. That's part of our job, and it's part of what we need to do. So I think as a point of growth, we need to start holding each other accountable equitably. And I think that that's something that we are growing in. Everyone, the next board, my agenda. The next board meeting will be tomorrow. That's a board retreat on January 25th at Kensington Elementary School, Kensington Hilltop Elementary School. And then our next regular board meeting will be February the 7th at Lavonia Dejan Middle School. We are adjourning this meeting at 10:21. I'm dyslexic. At 10:21. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your hard work. I really appreciate it. And we go together. I'm complete.